Okay, got 11:45, looking across the dais, and I got the majority of everybody here, so we got a quorum. I'm going to start the workshop off with standard operating procedures, legislative policies, and priorities. And I will hand that over to you, Mr. Aaron.
Mayor, welcome back.
Thank you.
And good morning, Council. First item on your agenda is to have a general discussion about our legislative efforts and standard operating procedures moving forward with regards to legislative advocacy. So I'm going to go through, and basically what I've done is I've highlighted in the slides the language that we're proposing for your consideration that ultimately could be adopted at a future business meeting with regards to a standard operating procedures, which we'll be calling SOPs, for legislative advocacy for both council and for staff. The intent is to preserve the traditional policy-making authority of the mayor and council while providing staff with the agility needed to respond quickly to rapid developing matters in the Oregon legislature and public agencies, because things will pop up and we'll not be able to respond in too timely of a fashion because a response may be needed that same day. So I've got Greg Limhouse here also with United Strategies. He'll be following up my presentation of SOPs with regards to the legislative update, provide you a legislative update. You'll be able to discuss what our legislative priorities might be moving forward, and we will also maybe have a general discussion about City Council's interest in potentially going to DC this year for some legislative advocacy also. Looking at the SOPs, I'll break these down here. Mayor and City Council would retain full policy-making authority for setting the city's legislative priorities and positions. So that basically states where the true policy making resides, and that is with the City Council. The city manager and staff would be charged with implementing the council's policy direction, manage the day-to-day operations, and ensuring the city's interests are represented in legislative and regulatory processes once council has identified those legislative priorities. The League of Oregon Cities and regional partners may serve as guidance for alignment with broader municipal positions, but council direction takes precedence. When it comes to the city manager and staff may provide letters of support, opposition, or testimony on legislation or agency actions only within the following framework. That's really primarily where staff brings in and provides legislative support, is through those type of things like a letter or testimony. So in order for that to happen with council authority, it would be the following. Council would adopt legislative priorities each biennium, which establishes the city's formal position. So you would provide direction on what the formal positions of the city would be and the interests. The city manager may provide support or testimony consistent with the priorities that you have identified. When it comes to time-sensitive matters, when a legislative or agency matter arises that directly impacts city operations, funding, or regulatory compliance, a time constraint prevents prior council review, the city manager may submit testimony or letters provided that they are consistent with prior council position or practice, those that you've identified, and or focused on protecting established city revenue streams, operations, or compliance obligations. Limitations: staff testimony or support letters will not advocate for new taxes, fees, or major policy shifts without explicit council direction. When uncertain, the city manager will confer with the mayor and council president prior to submitting testimony or letters. The city manager will notify the council as soon as practicable when testimony or letters are submitted on the city's behalf, and copies of all testimony or letters would be provided to the council for transparency. Council may, at any time, provide updated guidance or modify the city's legislative priorities, because as we know, things change, and things change quickly at the state level also. Following each legislative session, the city manager will provide a legislative session report summarizing testimonies or letters submitted, outcomes of key legislative proposals, and recommendations for future council direction. If legislative or agency matters present novel or significant issues outside the established council priorities, the city manager will do a couple of things. One, bring the matter forward to the mayor and council for direction when time permits. If we can foresee something happening, we would need to have a discussion during a workshop on that. In urgent cases where time does not allow for full council review, we'd be conferring with the mayor and council president to determine an appropriate course of action moving forward. That is the recommended standard operating procedures for us moving forward. Again, the guidelines provide an opportunity for council to set legislative direction for the biennium, allowing staff to then follow through with council's legislative priorities. And in the effort that something new comes up, things would be conferred with the mayor and the council president before further action was taken. Your alternatives would be provide direction to adopt the SOPs at a future business meeting, provide direction with modifications, or not adopt, and or request further workshop for further discussion. And with that, what I'd like to do, and then we could open it up maybe for questions of everything once you've gotten a full legislative report, is, unless you want to stop here, I'd like to bring Greg up and he could talk a little bit about the Oregon political outlook and where we're headed. So with that, Greg, I'm going to pull up your presentation here. All right, there you go. Up and down arrow will do it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to raise us up a little bit, Aaron, no offense. Sorry. All right, Mayor and Council, thanks for having me today. Again, my name is Greg Limhouse. I'm with United Strategies and Consulting. My business partner, Carrie, who I believe you have all met, and one of our colleagues, Isis Thornton-Saunders, are on their way up to Salem as we speak for legislative days. I'll meet them up there later today. This is the last legislative days session for the year. And what legislative days are, they're legislative hearings that are held. No action can be taken in the hearings, but we do get an idea as to what may be coming up next session. This week in particular is consequential in that, and we'll talk more about it for the upcoming session, is the state has identified an approximately $350 million shortfall in the budget that they passed at the end of last session. And so they need to figure out how to balance that. By state law, they cannot run a deficit. So what they have asked all of the agencies to do is to come before the legislative bodies, committees, with reduction package options. So all the committees you're hearing from, Department of Administrative Services, Oregon State Police, OHA, all of them, about how would they reduce their budget. And I believe the target was 10%. That may not happen for every agency, but they want to start those discussions. So this week is a pretty impactful week. We'll also be having meetings with various legislators and the legislative leadership to further find out what their priorities will for the upcoming session and what they'll be. But we'll get to that in a second. What I want to talk about really quickly is I'm going to do just a very brief recap of last session. At the end of the session, session ended in June. That was a long session. I think within a few weeks we sent you a pretty lengthy report. It was about 35 pages long. There's a lot to it of all the bills that passed, what happened, what didn't happen. During a long session, like we had last session, we will review over 3,000 bills. This last session, 3,400 bills were introduced, and about 3,000 of those were introduced the very first day of session. And that requires us all to go through it as fast as we can to determine, does it impact the city of Grants Pass? How does it impact you? Get information, feedback. It becomes a really, it's like drinking from a fire hose for the first couple weeks, and as the session moves on, things kind of take shape. But I'm going to touch briefly on a few things that impact the city. If you have questions, I'll give you some follow-up, but it might be better to email you all with the response of a more detailed answer. It's in that report as well. I just don't want to take up all of our time on that today. But these were pretty influential, pretty important legislation the last session. Senate Bill 179, recreational immunity. This was a really debated bill the prior session in 24. And the reason it came about is an individual, I think it was a coastal town, I want to say Seaside, I might be wrong, tripped and fell on a walkway going down to the beach. This individual sued the city, and it was determined by the courts at that time that the city would be liable for that, even though they weren't really at fault, it was their path. And so they said, well, you're liable. And then you had insurance companies say, okay, well, if that's the case, we're not going to insure cities anymore. So cities were in a position where they felt they may have to shut down their parks, they may have to shut down all their recreational activities because they wouldn't be able to withstand lawsuits. So kind of an emergency legislation was passed during the short session in '24, which put a Band-Aid on it. And there was still more discussion that to be had, but it essentially said, okay, cities are immune to this, but let's talk about it in the long session. That occurred, and a lot of work went into this issue by the cities prior to the session, so it passed with fairly low fanfare. But essentially, cities are immune. There is recreational immunity, that if the cities aren't doing anything that's excessive, it's reckless in terms of how they're maintaining their properties, we take as citizens and members of the community some responsibility for using the park, walking on the bike path. If I fall down and the city hasn't done anything grossly irresponsible, that's on me. So there is recreational immunity now for the cities, and that was really big, really important. Didn't get a lot of attention, but important. House Bills 2074 and 2078, we talk about this a lot more in the report. It's vertical and multifamily rental housing and properties tax extensions. Ideally, that provides for the ability to have more of those types of facilities in Oregon. What we are finding, though, and I think the staff would probably back me up on this, planning, community development, a lot of housing bills have passed the last couple sessions that really just aren't that workable. And we're hearing from a lot of other cities wanting to tell legislators, okay, we hear what you're trying to do, but it doesn't work. The parameters you put on these things make it very difficult for us to get anything done. The other thing that other cities are saying, and I think I've heard from staff too, is one of the messages we'd like to tell the legislature is just stop. Slow down. Every session you're coming up with new regulations, new housing things we have to do, and by the time the staff gets ready to roll something out, something new comes up. And so it's so difficult to implement anything that they want done. So that'll be part of the message we'll talk about in a little bit. Another really significant bill that passed that, again, probably didn't get a lot of attention is House Bill 3746. That is the condo defect requirements. So there's a lot of technicalities to this, and my business partner, Carrie, has a background in housing and real estate, probably explain it better. But essentially, it became very, very difficult in the state to sell condominiums. And the reason why is the look back that insurance companies would require to insure a condominium for defects was so long that banks didn't want to loan on condos. And condos in this housing market, as you probably all see, has become, I think I heard a legislator say this, and I think it's a good way to describe it, the new starter home for people. You can buy a condo for a reasonable amount and then start to build your wealth and flip it and build. But if condos aren't allowed to be sold in Oregon, that takes away a really key piece to our housing inventory model. Well, this changes that and should make it a lot easier not only to sell condos, but now encourage developers to build condominiums. So that, again, that's another piece to the puzzle of the housing shortage we have. Senate Bill 916, I'm sure you're all aware of this. This provides unemployment to striking workers. This will have an enormous impact on cities, school districts, anything that's self-funded. The cities, the school districts, all of them came out very opposed to this, but it passed, and starting January 1st, this will be a reality. And how that impacts the city, I think we can all assume that's going to be something that's going to be very impactful, I guess is the best way to put it. There is some rulemaking going on right now, and we sent that information to Aaron. It gives the city a chance to provide some input in the rulemaking process. I don't know how much of an impact it will have, but it's important to at least provide that perspective so that they can consider it. The rulemaking process happens after the law is passed, and then they start to determine, okay, how do we implement this law? So it's kind of the archaic, quiet version of how a law gets implemented. And then, of course, the statewide shelter program. This adds a ton more money to the statewide shelter program. This was a priority of the governors, and I'm sure you're all pretty prized on how the shelter programs are working in Oregon. So that's kind of a few more, sorry. 906, employee deduction transparency. You have to know what is being deducted out of your paycheck. The land use application timeline speeds up the timeline, so it makes it harder for people to try and use the system to slow down application approvals. Of course, replace age discrimination. As we're having an aging population, this becomes more and more of an issue, so there are more protections against type of discriminations for age. And this is another one that is an interesting one that definitely impacts the city, but it's very complicated, and as of right now, they're trying to figure out how this works. So bespoke is a term we heard a million times during the session, and that essentially means you make something separate from something else. So in this case, prevailing wage has to be paid by the city when you're doing a government project. What this law says is that if you are making pipes for a government project for Grants Pass and you're making them in Idaho, if the project is for the city of Grants Pass, you have to pay prevailing wage to the workers creating those pipes. That creates a much more expensive project. The problem is the state at this point, I don't think has quite figured out how to enforce that. How do you make sure that the worker in Idaho is getting paid prevailing wage for a project in Grants Pass, Oregon? It's very complicated. So this is one of those bills where the intent is clear. We're just not really clear yet on how it's going to roll out. So we are staying plugged into this, and we'll let you know every step of the way how this rolls out. But I would expect some type of system to where if the city is doing a project and you are hiring subcontractors to do work, even if it's not on the site itself, you're still going to have to pay prevailing wage, and that'll have to go into your cost model of how much it's going to cost in the end. Okay, any questions on last session's bills that passed? Again, if you want me to send that report to you again, let me know. I'll fire it to you. If you have any questions after this, send us an email and we'll get you some more answers. I will say, it was a very difficult session, and it kind of ties into what we're going to talk about now. There were some things that were held off till the very end of session. Again, we're dealing with over 3,000 bills, and with 2 weeks ago in the session, the initial transportation package came forward, a multi-billion-dollar package. And I think the assumption from legislative leadership is that they had the votes, they would pass it. Turns out they didn't have the votes. They had some inter-party fighting, the majority party did, and they were not able to get it across the finish line, which of course required the special session. The special session did not go as planned either. That took a lot longer than they thought, and as you have been probably tracking, the bill just recently was signed just a few weeks ago, which means, and we'll talk about what's happening then. What did pass was House Bill 3991. It's approximately a $4.3 billion over the next 10 years it'll raise. It'll be a 6-cent gas tax increase effective January 1st of next year. Registration fees for passenger vehicles, utility vehicles, light trailers, low-speed vehicles, all those listed will increase. Title fee increases on passenger vehicles. Payroll tax will increase as well, starting or going until 28, and increase the registration surcharges for electric and highly fuel-efficient vehicles are in there as well. It'll also phase in mandatory RUC program for electric vehicles by 2031, increase auditing for ODOT. This was a big piece of the minority party's negotiation, is they wanted more audit for the ODOT, because I don't know if a lot of you, well, I think we told you this, they essentially lost $1 billion misaccounted for, and that really impacted some of the legislators' willingness to give them more money. So they wanted to make sure that there was an auditing system. Removes existing statutory language requiring tolling. That was another big issue. That's really one of the main reasons the initial bill failed. There were Democrats in the Portland area who were just adamantly opposed to tolling, and they would not give their votes if that was in there. And there was still some gamesmanship about whether it was or it wasn't. So one of the key senators, Senator Meek, pulled his support. And it simplifies the state's weight mile tax on heavy trucks. One of the key things, and this is a key to remember going forward, as this eventually a package will have to be passed. The 50-30-20 split was retained. That is the split that the cities get. The cities get 20%. That will remain. There was some threat to remove that towards the end of the session, but the cities fought hard against that. If a package does pass, the city needs to have a split of the gas tax to pay for things. We don't see any indication that that would change at all. I think that's fairly well cemented as of right now. And of course, this is just kind of how it broke out. Passed with one Republican vote. That was Representative Javity, who has now switched over and become a Democrat. And passed on party line votes in the Senate, and of course was signed by the governor. Now, that's not the end of the story, as you know. There is a referendum going on, and the last I heard is they've collected, I think, over 50,000 signatures so far. They have a very short time period to do it, and that was the political calculation of the governor. It's why she was waiting, because they couldn't gather signature until she signed it. And then once she signed it, they had as many days left, I think it was maybe 30 days left, to gather enough signatures to refer the ballot to a special election, which will occur at the beginning of next year. The Republicans seem pretty organized on this. Based on their initial start, I think they will get the signatures. It's not going to be easy, but I think they will. That is going to impact the upcoming election. There is some belief that this is not polling well at all, and there is a very good possibility in our analysis that if it does make the ballot, that the transportation package would be overturned. But that just means in the short session, we're going to have to address it again. So we have to have some type of funding for ODOT and transportation. The fight is how we do it, and that'll come up again in the short session. We do believe it'll have an impact on the upcoming gubernatorial election. So far, Governor Kotek has not announced re-election, but we fully expect that she will. As you've seen, there's, I think, 10 Republicans now running for the nomination. Probably the most significant one, the most well-known, is now Senator Drazen, who lost by about 3% last time. That was with a third-party candidate in. And I think she feels pretty strongly she has a shot this time, so she's already in. And there's a Republican county commissioner out of Salem, Daniel Bethel, who's also running, and then a number of other ones. So that's still taking shape. And then Impact H.R. 1, the big beautiful bill on Oregon, really what that did is it really, there's a lot to it, but the best way I can describe it is over time, certain states took advantage of all of the available options to expand Medicaid. Not all states did, but Oregon was one of them that did. They expanded as much as they possibly could, and then what Congress said is, that's cool, but we're not paying for the expansion stuff. You got to fund that on your own now. We'll pay for this. And there's more to it, but that really created this giant hole in the budget. And so it required the state to go back and relook at everything they funded. What also put the state kind of in a bad spot was timing, and we'll talk about that when we talk about our DC trip. The state is required during the long session. Sine die means the constitutional end of the session has to end June 30th. So they knew that they had to come up with a budget by June 30th. They also knew that Congress wasn't going to have their budget till July 4th probably. So they were setting a budget knowing that this could be completely off because we don't know what Congress is going to come up with. And then Congress came out with their budget, then they had to recalculate. So that's part of what's going on right now. Okay, any questions about any of that stuff, kind of where we are with things right now? I think one of the reasons when you see other states talk, we went back east during the summer to the National State Legislators Conference, and there were legislators from all over the country there. There are some states like Utah, and I think Texas and some others, that are not being impacted by H.R. 1 nearly as much because they simply didn't expand their Medicaid options as much as Oregon and some others did. So that's one of the reasons those states don't have an issue. I will say, though, that it does impact rural hospitals significantly. It really does. And so that's something to keep an eye on. Asante is one of our clients. Of course, they're your local hospital. They're also your largest employer in the area, so I think it's important to keep an eye on how they're doing with this. All the hospitals are kind of scrambling to try and figure out how they're going to do their funding, because it's not just this, it's impacting them. It's a lot of things that are impacting rural hospitals, especially the payer mix. Some rural hospitals, the Medicaid payer mix is up to 70%, and that makes it really hard because that doesn't pay, you know, all the bills. So it makes them hard to keep doing what they need to do. So we'll keep you updated on that as well. Okay, moving on to priorities discussion. A couple months ago, we sat down with staff, and what we'd like to do is go over what we came up with in that meeting, and then whatever you come up with. Again, if you don't have thoughts on it today, that's okay. Just email us, and we'll respond to everybody so everybody's aware of it. And what I'd like to do is bring back kind of a final draft for you to look at before short session. Short session, say that 3 times, starts February 2nd. So ideally December, January, whenever there's a good time, we'll bring that back and make sure we're all on the same page as to what your priorities are. One, of course, is House Bill 3115. So House Bill 3115 is there's some interest in reforming that. That's the camping law in Oregon, which you all know very well. Our recent discussions with Oregon Business and Industries is that they may try and put something on the ballot, but very recently they said really their goal is to try and build a bipartisan, both parties' effort to reform that in the upcoming session. I don't know if that's feasible or not. It's going to take the majority party, the Democrats, to do that, and in a gubernatorial election year, I don't know how many will have the appetite to do that. Part of that effort will be to build a coalition of support for reform, and as I understand it already, and if this is wrong, tell me, the city of Grants Pass would want to be part of that coalition to help reform this bill. If that's not true, please let me know. As that starts to build, we'll stay in contact and make sure we're on the same page with what that might be and what that might look like. Paid family and medical leave, that's another issue that I think every staff struggles with. Again, it's kind of like the land use laws. There's so many coming that it's hard to keep up on everything. And it's making it really difficult to not just recruit but retain, because it really makes it hard to hire the right folks because of the expense of it all and to keep track of it. And this one is difficult. It's a small thing, but it's a big thing, and it's not just the city. The Oregon Government Ethics Commission guidance on food at public meetings is gifts. There's some belief that it's a gift. There's some that it's not. What's the level of it? Everybody wants to stay in compliance. It's not just your city, it's a lot of cities to deal with, so we need to figure that out and determine, what's the answer here. Right now in Oregon, there's a $50 limit on giving any legislator any gift. That's really low, and for obvious reasons, for sure, certainly, but I think there's an effort to want to, or there's an intent to want to modernize that and update it and make it clear at least. Senate Bill 48 reform also is on the list. Land use complex timelines, phases, and we talked about that. Protect local authorities for system development charges. So as you know, SDCs are a big part of your budget, your revenue. There are some efforts by the state to take some of that money and use it for their goals. And one of the things that we're going to push for is local control over the money that you have control over. Middle housing code. Make that so that it's a little easier to use and more effective using it locally. And of course, I think a big one that has to do with a lot of the homeless issues is behavioral health and addiction treatment. We're seeing a lot of failure, frankly, up in the northern part of the state of how these programs rolled out, hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's not really moving the needle. Oregon, I think, ranks one of the top states in the nation of behavioral health need and one of the lowest in terms of access. So, this is one of those nonpartisan issues. We see people on both sides because everybody I've ever known, whether it's yourself or a family member or a close friend, deals with mental health issues. It's part of being human. And so I think everybody sees that this is the core of a lot of problems we have and want to see a better system. What that looks like is still up for debate. There are some debates whether or not we should increase the ability to take people into custody for mental health issues. It's really difficult to do in this state. And there are people that want to kind of revisit that a little bit more. And of course, not just the funding, but where it goes and who deals with it. So that's it for that. Any questions on all of that stuff? I know it's a lot. And again, feel free to chew on it and send us some questions. It's probably best to send those through Aaron, and then we'll respond as soon as we can with any of it.
All right, do we have any questions in regards to the legislative presentation that was given to us just now?
Great, sort of highlight the potential interest of council to do some lobbying and with regards to DC and what that would look like and what that entails.
Yeah.
We would need to get started on that.
Yeah, so basically, I guess is if you guys need some time to digest, then go through this. You did send out a brief synopsis, or 35-page synopsis, you said earlier.
I'll resend it so you guys have it at the top of your email.
Yeah, if you could resend that to everybody and get it fresh in their mind. What I'm hearing to council is that if you do want to be involved in the upcoming legislative practices, basically, you guys got to get on their radar.
Yeah.
So do your research and do your due diligence, and then we can circle back.
Yeah, and it's really important that the council, the city is in lockstep. These are our priorities. It helps us when we're in meetings, we can look at things and go, okay, this is an issue for Grants Pass. And I didn't touch on it, and I promised I would, but I'll do it very quickly before we get to the DC stuff. Upcoming is the short session. Short session means 35 days. It's like speed dating, and it's a mess. It really is. It used to be the state met every other year because it took a long time to travel by horse from Pendleton. Well, they finally updated that in 2012, I think it was, and said don't meet every year, but every other year we'll just meet for 35 days, and all we'll do is just rebalance the budget. Of course, they're politicians, so that never happens. And last short session, they did campaign finance reform and re-legalize drugs. So, you know, it's going to be a crazy session. They have to fill that gap, so we believe it's what we call a reverse appropriation session, where asking for money is probably not going to be a very good message. Trying to keep things from being cut that impact the city will be the biggest fight that you'll have. But I just want to underline what Aaron said about your protocol. I think you have a really good SOP for dealing with, you know, feedback. But for the short session, just keep in mind, 2 days is like a week. So you might get something multiple times in one day on different topics, and we need to have an answer really fast if you want to weigh in on it or you want us to take a position. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be a very fast, hyper-speed session. DC, as Aaron mentioned, it is important to start planning. The DC calendar is different from the states. They meet every year. They do take August off for recess, and they have kind of a calendar when it comes to budgets. The recent actions in DC kind of push that calendar back a little bit because they just passed a continuing resolution, comes up again in a few months. But we did call back last week with some contacts we have and confirmed that in general, our timeline is still on the money. What happens is that in around June, they start voting on appropriations. Appropriations meaning financial packages, earmarks, if you will. To get in line for those, if that's your interest, we really need to target being out there in April or May. If there's something the city wants, if there's something the city wants funds for pipelines or projects or things like that, we need to make that ask in April or May so that I can get into the appropriations budget. That may be something you want to look at, especially since the state session is going to be very tight for funds. So think about that, obviously talk with your staff, and we need to come up with a very tight, very clear package for our ask and be able to justify the need. And then what we'll do is me and my team will determine the best route to do that, who we think our best options are. I will say Congressman Bentz is not a fan of earmarks. He will support some asks, but a lot of times he won't ask for them himself. He just doesn't believe in earmarks that much. Not to say he's adversarial to that at all, but that's just, we need to understand that going in. But obviously the two senators are an option for us, and so we have some other contacts within Congress we can work with too, but going through our delegation is going to be obviously the most important thing, to be able to get them to see what Grants Pass needs if it's appropriations wise. If it's something else, then we just need to be very clear on what that ask is before we go. We like to get meetings set up well in advance, at least a month in advance, to get on their calendar, to meet with the member themselves, or just as important, sometimes more important, the relative staff member. A lot of times they have so many big issues they're dealing with, the staff members, the chief of staff are the ones that advise the member on this is what we're going to do on this. So don't feel disheartened if you're not talking with the senator, instead you're talking with their healthcare policy person. That can be very impactful as well. And of course, we can get meetings with relative or relevant committee members and committee chairs. So all we need to know is who would like to go, what issues we want to work on, so we can reach out and start setting up those meetings. We'll put together an agenda, an itinerary, and make sure we make maximum use of your time and coordinate with Aaron and the staff to make that happen. I think it's worth it. I know the city of Medford, I think, goes out every year. Other cities do too. It's a long ways, but congressmen and women, I do think they do appreciate it when you do make the effort to go out there and talk to them in person, because they know it's not easy and it's not cheap necessarily. So, any questions?
Any questions in regards to the federal jurisdiction that was just outlaid? All right. Well, thank you. So would you, I guess as a council, I guess I'd ask question is, would you like to do some research on your own and then maybe circle back in, say, March or February to kind of discuss something on the federal level?
I think March might be good timing because it'll allow the short session to essentially be done, and then we'll know how it impacted the city, if we want to see that. If there's something that you think transcends that, then let us know now. We can start working on that. As far as state policies and procedure priorities, please let us know as soon as you can on that so we can start putting them all together through Aaron and his team and get those back to you so we can get those ratified and have a clear picture going forward.
Council clear? Any questions from council? Victoria?
Back to the state, is that all right?
Sure.
All right. On slide 7, the 2026 priorities discussion, are these, where did the priorities come from? Was that through talks with cities, or is that just what the legislature is telling you is going to be coming out in the short session? Could you describe that for me?
No, I'm sorry. This was the discussion we had with staff.
With staff, okay.
Right. These are their things that they identified.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you. I
And
wasn't
then
clear on
we,
that.
we will send you a report, obviously. League of Oregon Cities, which you're a member of, they have, things that they believe are priorities. Doesn't mean it has to be yours, but we'll make sure you know that as well. And I think the other thing I failed to mention, and I'm sorry about that, is when we do have a request to Aaron, to you via Aaron about an issue, we will be checking in with your local delegation, Senator Robinson, Representative Yunker, to at least get their positions on it so you have that awareness as you're making your decision as well. So we'll try and give you as much intelligence as we can before you make your call on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions from council? All right, thank you very much for your download, and we'll be in contact. We'll bring it back to the standard operating procedure with Aaron. Does any counselor have any questions in regards to Aaron's presentation on standard operating procedures? Victoria?
On slide 5, it says, consistent with prior council positions or practices and/or focused on protecting established city revenue streams, operations, or compliance obligations. I think the issue we had last time when it came up was it was from a prior council. I just wondered if there was any thought of, and I don't know how to do this, Aaron, but if there was any thought about making sure that, city business, of course, should just stay consistent regardless, but there was a little bit of an issue with turnover in council that kind of changed some things. And can you explain if any thought went into putting language in there about that, or just considerations?
Well, I think the language in here states that, before each session, we would be touching base again with council to make sure we identify what those legislative priorities are. And we could even also incorporate that in our strategic planning review that we do each year. Even though we may not have a full strategic plan, I anticipate council and I would recommend that we do a short session strategic plan review, and we can address it then. So whether it's a newly elected council or not, we would have it at the beginning of the year.
Oh, right. So that sounds really good to me. So basically, things that have to be done really fast, we can anticipate that those things are going to be from the 2026 priority discussion?
Yeah.
Generally? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions in regards to the standard operating procedures for public policy and legislative efforts? Indra.
So it sounds like, Aaron, I just want to confirm that anything the staff or you are putting out there that maybe was okay with prior city council or staff, I would like to know what was consistent with them, the history of it, and then you will address us as to whether that's how we want to move forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, the standard, well, let me understand what you're saying. These standard operating procedures are established to where council will provide clear policy direction before the legislative sessions on the major issues. So when something comes up, when United Strategies contacts us and says, hey, we need a support letter signed by either myself or the mayor or somebody, if it's directly in correspondence with what council has already said, yes, we support this, we can go ahead and do so and meet that 2-hour timeline or 1-day timeline turnaround. In situations where we may have a day or two or more time and it's not something that's been prioritized, because bills will change, and all of a sudden maybe one bill that we thought was relatively decent all of a sudden increases taxes by something, and it changes and some dynamic has changed, then it would then be referred to the mayor and council president for discussion on whether or not we should support, and then with their guidance they would also provide yes, this is within the spirit, or hey, we need to have a discussion, or no, we can't support that at this time.
So would that be a decision solely from the mayor and council president, or would they inform the rest of the council members and get feedback and input on that? They would,
like mentioned here, if a legislative advocacy matter presented in all outside established council priorities, the city manager would bring the matter to the mayor and council for direction with time permits. If it's urgent, we would go to the mayor and council president to determine what the appropriate course of action would be. So that would be up to the mayor and council president. We would not be able to send something out to council and then get your feedback, because that'd be a serial meeting. The appropriate action would be the mayor and the council president would say, okay, this time frame, we need to have a response within a day. We're not meeting again for another week. So mayor and council president may say, we don't have the support of council. There would not be an initiative signed and sent forward, or hey, we need to have a special meeting or whatever. But that would be the mayor and the council president to help provide direction on what to do with that issue when it comes up to an urgent case. And not everything is an urgent case, but there are sometimes urgent cases that come up.
I would just want to make sure that mayor and council president reached out to council members before decisions like that. That's all.
Any further questions, Kathleen? And then Joel?
Well, I just remember a letter being issued without the council's input on it, and when it was recognized that that letter was going out, it was like, wait, stop, we don't back that. I guess that was some sort of urgent message, and how can we, is that the January short session that you're talking about, running things by us, or? I mean, to avoid that from happening again.
The standard operating procedures in front of you avoids that from happening. If there's something that has not been discussed with council, then it would not go out. We would have a discussion with the mayor and council president if there's some kind of new thing that council did not provide policy direction on. Then it would be the council president and the mayor to provide direction on how we should proceed.
Joel?
Well, I would support establishing those standard operating procedures. I think the rub comes when there's some revenue there that staff would like and the city would like, and maybe it's not the political will of the council to go after that. And so we need to be sensitive to that. We also need to trust the mayor and the council president to do their job, and they will. So I would go ahead and recommend adopting those as standard operating procedures in the future.
Any further questions? So Joel has proposed a motion to adopt the SOPs as presented. Any further discussion? And then we got a second support from Seth. Any further discussion?
The further discussion would be if council provides this direction, Mayor, is that we would just move that forward to a future business meeting for you to adopt that, and we'll put it in format with background and a resolution for you to consider.
Correct. So yeah, you guys would be basically directing staff to put the SOPs as presented forward to a future business meeting. Any further questions or discussion in regards to that? Let's look across the dais and give a thumbs up or a thumbs down. All right, you have majority support. Do you have direction, Aaron?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
And thank you very much, sir. Okay, next on the agenda is structure and process for non-city proclamations and public notices.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. Bringing this forward, I've got a small presentation. Ultimately, this was a request by council or a council member to have a discussion with regards to our proclamation process and then also our public notice processes on our website. So basically, how we push certain information, there was an interest in discussion on that and if we want to maintain the current practices that we have. So I'll go through and I'll review the current practices that we have, and then also we'll discuss any potential changes and what those changes might be or how they may impact the way we push information. So council did, back in 2020, establish a proclamation process with the adoption of a resolution. The guidelines are as follows. It states that proclamations must be submitted at least 30 days in advance. That helps the mayor ultimately schedule proper proclamations in a timely fashion. They're not automatically renewed each year. The mayor reserves the right to approve or decline the request, and proclamation requests must come from Grants Pass residents or a organization from Grants Pass. The content, which is one of the interest items, I think, of discussion today, just as a refresher, proclamation should reflect inclusive, not exclusiveness, and recognize that the strength of our democracy is in diversity. It must not take sides in matters of political, ideological, or religious controversy or individual convictions. So someone may come forward and they have some kind of political or religious issue that's brought forward. In the past, the mayor has chosen not to proclaim those because it's against the policy that we have defined here. Proclamations must have a citywide significance and demonstrate relative relevancy to Grants Pass. So through a lot of research, thank you, Stephanie, for adding some of this information to this topic. Proclamations have been determined to have an exemption from the First Amendment freedom of speech requirements and are classified as government speech. So what does that mean? It means that technically the city and the mayor has the flexibility to establish a process for proclamation content, and it does not have to address the First Amendment freedom of speech requirements. So promoting non-city matters other than in a proclamation is not government speech, and First Amendment would apply. So what does that mean? What I'm trying to say there is for proclamations only, it's considered government speech. If we were to post notices on our website or social media, that would be First Amendment speech that we would have to follow. So the government speech only applies to proclamations. So you have a broad opportunity to express your interest, and you can now go above and beyond our current policy if council so desires, if mayor so desires, with regards to how we're currently publishing things. But from a city perspective, we need to be very careful of First Amendment. Our current practice is to reserve city communication platforms for city programs, city services, and events that are directly organized or sponsored by the city. So I've gone from proclamations to talking just generals to give you some background so then you can have a bigger discussion on the dais. We talk proclamations. Proclamations are technically government speech, which provides you additional freedoms above and beyond First Amendment speech issues that you have to be aware of. Now, for pushing topics, pushing special events, pushing items that are associated with things that we do on social media, we still have to deal with First Amendment right speech issues. As such, the city has and is likely recommending that we continue to only push and reserve information that's directly sponsored by the city or affects the organization. City communication should reflect inclusiveness, and it's the same thing as this is what we're following currently right now, which is a similar practice that we're following for our proclamations. Must not take sides of political, ideological, or religious controversy or individual convictions. It is recommended that we maintain the above practice as freedom of speech would apply if we change the way we publish notices on social platforms. So hopefully what I did today is I teed up two things for your conversation. If you're interested, one, proclamations in our current guidelines, and then public notices and push and notices on social media outlets for the city. One, you have some flexibility because it's considered government speech, that's proclamations. The second item, when it comes to pushing items from our website, we're still recommending to maintain the current practice that we have as freedom of speech would apply. What does that mean from an aspect of that? Let's say someone wanted to do the city wanted to publish something, say, with regards to abortion. Let's say if we wanted to push an item for a march or something like that, a pro-life march or a pro-choice march, you would have to publish for both. You can't pick and choose. If you're going to open that up, you have to open it up to everyone. And then you'd be able to post everything when you address freedom of speech issues. That's not the same for proclamations because it's called government speech. So that's the that's the differences between the two. Government speech, you are making a speech for the government, and that's okay. First Amendment does not apply. But when you're talking about pushing other than proclamations, you either have to keep it to what we have right now, which is it does not address those issues of political, religious, ideological, controversial issues, and you're just pushing the city stuff, and then we are still in compliance with freedom of speech issues because we're not opening it up to everyone. So with that, I will pause and look forward to discussion and potential direction if there's any.
Thank you, Aaron. Thank you very much for confusing the crap out of me. But that's okay. I appreciate that. Thanks giving me the final test on my first day back. Thanks. Questions from council? I see Victoria because you were in peripheral. I'll go with Karen and then Joel. So, Victoria?
Yeah. So let me know if I'm right, because the way that you explained it, I think I might be. I would love for the city to be able to have a proclamation for an event that's happened in our community for a very long time, very big part of our community, and that is the Right to Life March. And so from what you have said, and there may be others too, I'm just using that as an example, but what you explained to me, tell me if I have understood it correctly, that it would be all right for the city to have a proclamation just stating, we proclaim that the Right to Life March is happening. It's a big community event, and we just want to, I don't know if even the word honor, but just to acknowledge the work of this long-standing community event. That would be something that would be all right to do if we change our policy under a proclamation, but not under, to advertise on our website, correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Correct. For proclamations, it's government speech, and so you can sort of pick and choose. If you were to choose to do that on your social media platforms, you'd have to open it up to everybody. So both sides or multiple sides or points of views you would need to post those also.
But during a meeting, if it were to be done during a workshop or a business meeting, and it's not put on the, you could, You could, as a city, post that a proclamation was done, couldn't you? Or could it just be something that is done in a meeting and then not any further?
It only goes to meetings, and again, proclamations are the decision of the mayor. And so it would be, and if you were wanting to make some changes to our current policy when it comes to proclamations, that'd probably be a good idea if we're going to go that route. But
Okay, so.
But generally, what I said, I
what you said is you've got a good handle on it. That's
Okay,
correct.
all
Yep,
right,
you got
thank
it. Yep.
So I'm going to go to you guys in a second, but I have to stay on this. So the way I'm understanding the word proclamation is basically the same word as announcement.
Yeah.
So this,
Mr. Mayor?
It's,
I would actually disagree with that characterization.
that's why I'm having this conversation, because I need to clarify what the actual premise of the proclamation is, because I see a proclamation as I'm going to advocate for this, or I'm going to, so please do, definitely.
That is closer to accurate. So
Okay.
it's essentially the city taking a position. It's we are promoting this, or this, and I don't have the language of an actual proclamation in front of me, but more often than not, they're phrased something like, I, the mayor, hereby proclaim.
Correct.
Which means it is the government speaking. So as long as the government is speaking and has control over what that message is, and you can revise the proclamations if somebody else provides them, that's what makes it government speech, is that it's your statement on behalf of the government. And because it's government speech, there's no boundaries on viewpoint discrimination. That's where the rest of the First Amendment tends to come into play when we're talking about the notices or flyers. Those would be announcements. Those would be, it's the government proclaiming something versus the government pushing out a flyer for somebody else. Those are the two ways to look at it. And proclamations, we can take a position. The notices, you can't, because you're going to have some potential issues with First Amendment.
Thank you very, very much. Without me asking you to do all that for me, you did that, which was awesome. So basically that's what I was trying to get at, is the proclamation is more of advocating for something and not necessarily announcement. The way you explained it, Victoria, was that if the council was to use a proclamation to announce that there was an event coming up for this certain topic, I think that was I misunderstood that. So I think a proclamation would have to stay within the definition of advocating, of using the government speech to promote something, not necessarily an announcement. That's kind of the way I understand it, and the way you just explained it, it was a little bit different.
Yeah, so we need to figure out who's right.
Okay, so the idea of having this topic on the dais right now is there is a resolution.
yes, there is.
That defines the content of a proclamation. And so that is a resolution that's recorded at this moment in time. So if you want to proceed forward with doing something different, then that would be this time where we can discuss that. I guess we have more questions?
I think I just want to clarify also, Mayor, because the distinction that the city attorney and you are stating is a good clarification. When you are doing a proclamation, it's not just an announcement, it is a government speech. You are making a statement that you are in support of. You're not just saying, hey, come down to the fair, or come down to Boatnick or whatever, or come to this parade. You're saying, this is our political view, our governmental speech stance. So that's what proclamations are utilized for, versus, hey, here's a community event, we encourage people to attend.
Yeah, and the way I understand it is in previous council, before our time, is the resolution was kind of put forth just to basically define that as to, here are some parameters on defining, helping the mayor make the decision in regards to a proclamation, advocating for a proclamation or stating a proclamation and or not. So it actually gave the power back to council, because council decided on that resolution to guide the mayor in the proper, am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct.
Okay.
That was a helpful tool.
Okay, so Kathleen and then, Rick, did you have something? Go, you're very adamant, so let's hear what you have to say.
Well, I just want clarification. So if the piece of paper has the word proclamation on it, can it only be displayed at the time of the council meeting, or can it be posted on the city site because it has the title proclamation?
It can be posted, according to the policy, it would be distributed. You get a copy of the proclamation. It gets read into the record generally. So it's actually speech. It can in written and verbal format. So it can be on any platform. It's just, it is, because of the way it's framed, it's, the mayor is hereby saying X, Y, Z, which makes it government speech.
Thank you.
All right, that was clarification, Rick.
So I was-
Kathleen, and then I got Joel, and then Rick, and then Indra. So Kathleen first.
So my concern is preserving long-term, long period, long year, traditional proclamations that our city has enforced, I mean, up till now. I mean, this last year was kind of chaotic with, you know, not being able to do it this year. So I'm just wondering how we can balance that out with long year proclamations that have been done every year. Our community wants it, our community has done it in the past, and I don't want it to get derailed. So some of these, how can we balance that out?
So we have, I'm not sure about, I can't think of any specific proclamations that were derailed. We have a policy where each year, individuals that want to proclaim something just need to submit their request 30 days in advance. And so, and that's how the majority of the proclamations are birthed, is through that process. Although sometimes the mayor will find a proclamation and want to provide that leadership to do that. But a lot of them just come from the community requesting a proclamation.
Okay, Joel?
I just had a quick observation. Diversity without unity is dangerous. Unity without diversity is dangerous. And we've seen examples of both of those throughout history. And so I would like to say in our process that the strength of our nation is both in diversity and unity. And that's unity to the principles of our Constitution and the Bill of Rights and Declaration of Independence.
So do you think? You should end with, so do you think? Because that was question period.
So do you think?
Thank you very much. I had Rob and then Indra.
So I just wanted to clarify something Clint just said, or at least I guess I'll ask Aaron a question to clarify it. But Clint, you said that the current proclamation process was done by our prior council before our time, was the word you used. But my understanding is that actually you and Joel and Rick were on the council that actually created that proclamation process. So it wasn't before, it wasn't some distant past, and it wasn't the council that was voted out in 24, but it actually was you and Rick and Joel. Is that not correct, Aaron?
It was in 2020 that proclamation was,
Right, so, okay, so
that
that would have been
resolution was
Clint and Joel and Rick. So I just wanted to clarify, that was the council that created the current process.
Thank you for that clarification. And yeah, I was on the council at that time. My statement was more for, there was newer councilors that were asking for us to revisit the proclamation procedure. And so I guess my generalized statement was for on their behalf. But yeah, you are correct, Rob. It was on the council when I served back in 2020. Indra.
So the mayor has the purview to deny or accept proclamations. I mean, that's his job. And so I think some guidance would actually help the mayor in whoever the mayor might be. I mean, nothing that we don't trust the mayors, we do, but that might give them some good guidance in that sense. Is there any legal repercussions? So say the mayor approves certain political or ideological or that sort of proclamations, speaking on behalf of the city, but then when other proclamations from, I mean, there's always anti-groups to everything, right? And so if they should submit proclamations that were denied, is there any legal ramifications to the mayor, city in those cases?
Because it's government speech, the First Amendment doesn't apply. And so it's the government taking a position, and that position has been chosen. There's alternate positions out there, but that's not the position that was chosen. As you know, you all have a memo that will go into a little bit more of this in depth. But one of the things that courts have found is that basically the recourse for if people don't like the speech that's coming out of the government, then they can replace the government. So it's up to the citizens to decide that they want to elect somebody new next time because they don't agree with the positions being taken.
Any further questions, Victoria?
So, actually, it would be a comment, so it's not necessarily a question. So I'll wait.
Any further questions? Okay, so thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
So currently, your proclamation, there's a resolution that defines proclamations to a certain extent. It's not very defining, except for the fact that it basically just errs on the side of not to take sides in matter of political, ideological, or religious controversy or individual convictions. Yes, I believe that was set forth to give a guidance to the mayor in determining whether a proclamation should be issued or not, and with the guidance through that resolution that actually came from council members. So it would help the mayor make a generalized decision, knowing that he had the support of this topic being reviewed and scrutinized by council, not each individual topic, but the guidelines had been. So this was brought forth to you guys at this moment in time to educate yourself on where it stands, and if you want to further the discussion and change it, that is your purview at this moment in time. If not, then this would have been deemed as more of an educational session. With that statement, we can go into discussion. And Rob?
It's a discussion, but it's also a question. So it was my understanding from, I guess, prior communications from our city attorney that the proclamations were part of First Amendment issues. In other words, if we were to allow one side of an issue, we had to allow a different side. Now, today we heard that there's a thing called government speech, which would allow, during a proclamation, for the city to take pretty much any position they wanted and exclude any presentation from the other side. So that's accurate, right?
That is accurate. Okay. My understanding of it was not quite correct until I did a deep dive over the last few days.
Okay. So essentially, the resolution that's on the books now, whether we do anything to it or not, well, if we don't do anything to it, I'm not sure if Clint appreciates this or doesn't, but it basically is 100% up to the mayor, right? Whether he wants to or she wants to support a position. And he or she can do that without having to worry about the other side of an issue demanding equal representation. So the way it is now, it's 100% up to the mayor, and actually doesn't include the council at all, the way it's written now. Is that correct, Stephanie? Or Aaron?
I believe that's the way that the resolution is written, that it's the mayor's decision, but council provided the guidance through the resolution.
So if we were going to change this, it could, I would imagine, be changed, but I don't know, I'm asking, that the council were to vote on that, take the power away from the mayor, or it's the mayor's prerogative either way. In other words, so would council be allowed to change it to have council making the decision, take the power away from the mayor, or the mayor keeps it?
I honestly don't remember the resolution off the top of my head and whether or not it actually gives that power to the mayor or if that was already inherent, but I can get you an answer to that question sooner rather than later.
Because I think that that's probably really the only thing we're discussing. If we're discussing a change, if it's the mayor's prerogative now, that's fine, and if there's an ability to change that and council wants to change it, that would be the issue. Otherwise, I don't know what else we're discussing, really.
So do we know, is it spelled out in the charter? Okay.
We're confirming, we're confirming if proclamation is spelled out in the charter, but it currently, whether it's in the charter or if it's in council practice and policy, there is language stating that the mayor is the one that does the proclamations.
While we're researching that, any further questions, Victoria? Or, I mean, discussion, Victoria?
Yes, so I think I'm one of the people who wanted this revisited, and it was due to the fact that we weren't able to do a proclamation or to recognize the Right to Life March that's such a big part of our community. And it sounds like we would be able to do that. However, if we maintain the same process for non-city public notices, we probably still could not do that. So I would be interested in looking at the second bullet point on slide 7, where it says it must not take sides in matter of political, ideological, or religious controversial or individual convictions. And the reason why I would want to look at that language is because that right there is in the eye of the beholder, and nobody could define exactly what that meant. If you asked the 8 of us up here, we would have 8 different definitions. So it's not really definable. You could come to some general conclusions, but you couldn't probably have a hard and fast rule on that. So I would be interested in maybe striking some of that language and still, I think it is important. Proclamations seem to be a mayoral activity that's been done, you know, across the country, what have you. So it would be important to maintain the power for the mayor, but maybe with some input from council. So I don't know how this would be changed, but some language that would say, that would strike some of the language in the second bullet point, but it would, and maintain the mayor's ability to do or not do, but informed by the council. So maybe that would be the language, informed by council, not consent, but consensus possibly, something like that. So I would definitely be interested in updating that language so that there would be, not that there would be an absolute that this would happen. I'm using the March for Life just because that was the issue that came up before. There could be others in the future. But it would be a really great opportunity. I know it's honored at the county level, so it would be really nice for that long-standing tradition to be able to be spoken about at the city level too. Again, there could be other issues. So I would be interested in changing some of the language, not all of it, and also maintain mayoral, like veto, I guess. So it would be up to the mayor whether or not, but the possibility would exist that we could honor some more of those long-standing community events.
Any further discussion? I got Rick and Rob and then Indra. Rick?
So further elaboration on that second paragraph, city communication should reflect inclusiveness, not exclusiveness. We, the city council in the past, particularly focused on that and not creating sides in controversy. So I'm a little bit sensitive. Victoria, and I'm just trying to clarify, the mayor has the right to do a proclamation, and it's totally separate from controversy because of his right. But what bothers me, or what concerns me, if we start modifying that second paragraph, and we're looking at posting that notice on the city site as a, I don't know, posting process, do we want to open up the door for all different viewpoints having an open door to post on the city website? And that was part of the reason why we put that language in there. So I'm seeing there's two issues. One, there's the mayor issue, there's a city council issue, and what I'm sensitive to is what we, the city council, want to allow posted on our site. Am I perceiving that properly?
That is a fair concern. If you open up to basically put flyers about things onto the website or Facebook, that's where we start having to do some very careful analysis.
Yeah. So I'm still in favor of maintaining the current language that's in there. Thank you.
I just want to speak to that since
You want to rebut that or
Yeah,
comment
yeah.
on that?
So as it stands now, there's a very significant population in our city who is not able to be recognized, and it's been that way for a long time. So you could look at it that way as well. That's why I was thinking it would be good to strike some of the language, not all of it. And I also think, Rick, that just to kind of, unless I did not understand correctly, it is all right for mayor and informed by council to make those proclamations. And then if people don't like that, then like Stephanie said, the people have the right to change their government. But I think it's a good thing if a council promotes, or a mayor generally promotes some things that are of great importance to the community. So I don't see a problem with it. I think trying to avoid it is actually you're actually making your point. That I fall on this side and not this side because I'm excluding that. That's kind of how I see it, but I know it's like a nuanced, but the way that we have it now, there's a big, in this one issue, like the March for Life, that's a huge portion of our population who isn't represented or can't be represented in a possible proclamation. So that's why I thought it was important to look at it.
I got Rob, and then Indra, and then Kathleen. Rob?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with Rick in that I don't think that it would be particularly healthy for our community to change what we have now. I think that not taking sides in ideological, religious, or individual conviction issues, I think is probably smart. I don't think that we, council, needs any more heat in this chamber, and that particular issue is very hot. And anybody that was paying attention a few years back, and that might be three councilors that are up here, know that when we had tremendous representation of the, we'll say the Right to Life group at every council meeting, it was a half an hour of them taking over the meeting, and I don't believe anybody thought that that was particularly positive. I personally know, well, I had a young woman who worked for me, and I discussed this with Aaron, and I discussed it with the Chief Hensman a few years back when Right to Life issues were really boiling over at the growers market. I had a woman that worked for me whose father was actually killed from injury sustained in a Right to Life argument and what turned into a knife fight. And he didn't die immediately, he died about a year later. And that was a fight that happened up near Planned Parenthood. But so it's a very, very hot issue, and I personally think that anyone who, I don't necessarily know that somebody is going to feel better about their pro-life position just because the city council also proclaims that to be true, because the city council has no decision-making power. We have no jurisdiction over that issue. So it's really a personal issue or a religious issue or possibly even a political party issue. Although I would like to make one statement. I know that people were really surprised in Kansas when, there was a vote there to codify a position about, an anti-abortion position in their state charter. And it was shocking that even though that was a red state and everyone thought, oh, that's a pro-life state, the fact is the vote went the other way. So just because there's a number of people that are very visible on the March day doesn't necessarily mean that is a majority in our community. And again, I think it's a really hot issue, and I think it would be, especially since council has no jurisdiction over it, why would we open that up to more controversy and more heat in council chambers? I don't see the benefit to it.
Further comments? I have Indra and then Kathleen. Indra?
Yes, I'm going to say this. I'm a huge supporter of right to life, so it has nothing to do with that, but it does open the door to all different kinds of viewpoints, and I think what's put in there is really for protection of the mayor. I think to give guidelines to the mayor so that the mayor might get all sorts of proclamations to do. Some he would love to do and some he doesn't. And so it gives some protection that I can't, I can't do this because there are guidelines to that. So I would look at it in that sense, and we have a mayor that maybe would support what some of the councilors want, maybe doesn't support what other councilors want. But what happens if a mayor gets in that doesn't support what you think or one of us thinks? And then they can just sign proclamations as they will. So I think we do have to trust the mayor. He's out there, he knows the people, he's the head political figure of our city, to do what's right represent our city in a good sense. But I also think we do need to think about having his or her back as well.
Any further discussion? I got Victoria.
Well, that's kind of the point, is that each mayor and council should have the right to support positions that they want to, because they are elected by the people. And so that's why I think, and it's not, I think a proclamation to honor the March for Right to Life isn't even necessarily saying, I mean, of course it probably is, and tangentially anyway, it probably is, but it's recognizing an event of significant importance in our community. And that's why, and we haven't been able, the city has not been able to do it. So where one council and mayor might want to do that, the next might not want to. That's government, and that's the will of the people. The people vote for that. So I think being able as a mayor and a council to reflect what the people voted for is a right that we should maintain, and we shouldn't shy away from huge events in the community just because it might be controversial. I don't see it as controversial. It's been a huge event in our city that I think should be recognized by our city. And so that's why I thought, but again, there could be others as well. This is just the event that brought up this particular issue on the dais today. And I still think it is important for the council and the mayor to be able to recognize that. So a little bit, of course, with the mayor being able to maintain the ability to say it could or could not be, but the possibility should exist because the people vote for the council, and so they should have generally the opportunity to have some say through their elected representatives what is proclaimed in a city. And that obviously is going to change from election to election. So I don't see an issue with that. And I think it would be really great if the city could. So I'm still for it.
Thank you, Victoria, and I do appreciate that you are highlighting one specific event, but you did clarify that this was actually brought forth not specifically for that event, but to give the more latitude to the mayor. So thank you for that clarification. We have more discussion. So I first had Rob, Kathleen, and then Rick. So Rob first, please.
Yeah, it's very unclear as to what Victoria's point just was, because she was saying that the possibility should exist. Well, the way it's written right now, the possibility does exist. After it's been clarified by Stephanie today that there's government speech involved, the possibility exists right now. And there'd be guidelines in writing that the mayor would look at as far as what he feels or she feels is ideologically, religiously controversial or individual conviction. That's up to the mayor to decide. So the mayor could decide if something is controversial or not. If the mayor decides that the Right to Life March is not particularly controversial, then he can do the proclamation for it, just the way it's written right now. But there's guidelines, as Andrew was saying, there is guidelines to give the mayor an idea of what's expected, and the mayor can decide if he or she feels that something is too controversial. That's just the way it's written right now with no changes. So I don't really see a need to change it.
Further discussion, Kathleen?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but what I was hearing earlier was that the mayor can proclaim whatever he wants. It's just if it gets printed on the website that it gets a little bit controversial.
Not quite. The proclamations can be issued in written format, posted on websites. That's just fine. It's still government speech. What we're talking about, where there's concerns about things getting put forth on the website or the Facebook page, would be like a flyer from an outside organization, as opposed to something that the government itself is putting forward.
Further discussion, I have Rick.
So I like what Kathleen said. The thing I see is the council is sitting here to conduct city business. And when we just start detracting from that, we dilute our effectiveness. And the mayor has the right to proclaim something. But if the city council wants to open the door for just anybody to come in, because we're going to start posting on the city website our positions, I like the current policy that exists. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Further discussion? So basically, this was brought forward. I actually like the fact that there is a resolution out there that gives me as a representative mayor guidance. My political view at this moment in time is, and has been since I've started this venture in January, as the government should be very hands-off when it comes to ideological and religious beliefs, and basically the government needs to be doing business. Our business is resolutions, land, helping the city out, taking taxes from you guys to facilitate infrastructure. I believe that the government should stay in that realm, and we should, as Rick stated, we should focus on doing the business of the city and not necessarily dabble in the political realm of everything else. That might not be acceptable to everybody on the council, but as council members, you have the right, you have a political forum to announce yourself and all your beliefs to the citizens of Grants Pass. This was brought forth in a workshop to give the opportunity for council to revisit this. At this moment in time, I will ask council to make a decision whether to continue with current processes in the proclamation and posting the notices, or continue forward and amend the process. So I would be looking for some direction if discussion is over. Victoria.
Well, I think council has kind of been a little bit clear in the discussion, but I think everybody should have to state where they are on that. So I'm going to make a motion that the city move forward to change, to strike the "it must not take sides in political, ideological, or religious controversies or individual convictions" off of the guidelines, and to maintain And to add that the proclamation is at the purview of the mayor. So strike the second sentence and then add the extra added protection for the mayor into the guidelines for the mayor.
Okay, you have a counselor that has put a motion forward to amend the resolution for proclamations and policies.
Point of order.
Is there a second to that? We're going through the motion right now. Do you have a question about the motion?
I do. I have
Okay.
a point of order, because I'm confused, because this isn't the first time it happens. So my understanding is in workshops, we don't make motions and pass resolutions. We just like give suggestions to.
We're not doing an official change of the resolution, but you have a counselor that has made a motion to have the council amend that motion. No business is being done here. You're actually directing staff on whether we're going to amend this resolution or not. So
it's
that you
okay to
have somebody has a motion on the dais to go forth and amend the resolution as stated. So I was just going to look for a second. If there is no second, then the motion fails. Is there a second for Victoria's motion to amend the resolution? There's a second from Eric. Any further discussion? Rob and then Joel.
So I have a question. Half of the motion I understand, the other half seems to already be in place. So I understand the part about her desire to strike ideological, religious controversy or individual convictions from our current guideline, but right now the mayor has the ability already. So half of what Victoria said seems like it would be a change, and the other half just, it's the status quo. So I don't understand why both are in the motion, because one of them does nothing.
Clarify.
Half of it does nothing.
Well, I was taking the motion as a generalized motion to amend the resolution without substance, because we are not doing business in this workshop. We basically would be directing staff to relook at the resolution and bring back suggestions. So we're not actually parsing out the amendments to the resolution. We would basically be looking to see if council wants to direct staff to go forth and change the current resolution.
Okay, I appreciate that, and that's my understanding, but that's not what she said. So I need some clarity here. That's you saying it, Clint, and I agree with that, but that's not what she said.
Yeah.
So before I vote on this, I need to know what we're voting on, whether it's your summary or whether it's her specific words, half of which really made no sense. So
Okay, so I would bring it back to Victoria to clarify her motion.
Well,
Do you agree with what I was
it
saying,
was
or-
very clear. I was striking a sentence and adding more purview for the mayor. However, I agree with the mayor, and let's just say that this needs to be forwarded for change from staff. So I'm amending the motion to just the generalities that the mayor was talking about, but I will reiterate that what I said was exceedingly clear.
Okay, so we have clarification of the motion to proceed to direct staff to amend the current resolution and bring it back in another workshop. And we have a second on that. There was further discussion. Joel?
I think if we pass the motion, it's a double-edged sword. And we could get into a lot of situations that really we need to avoid. On the particular one of interest, you know, having spoken at several of the rallies and strongly supporting the movement, I get my direction on there not from city council, but from God. And it's generally been the role of government, especially local government, to be non-political. And I think we need to maintain that because it's a two-edged sword. I can think of some things that could happen 5 councils from now that wouldn't be appropriate. So I'm going to be voting no.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the table to amend the current resolution and have staff bring it back with recommendations. Any further discussion? If not, we'll go into a roll call. Indra?
No.
Rob?
No.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Yes.
Hold on. Sorry. Okay, Eric was a yes.
Yes.
Rick?
No.
Seth?
No.
Joel?
No.
Victoria?
Yes.
All right, we have 5-3, motion doesn't pass. So I would take it under guidance, but I would like an official from the council to, if there's a council member that would want to direct staff to keep with current procedures. I can't be leading the ship here, so one of you guys has to say it. Joel?
So I'll make a motion to continue with the current process for proclamation and city postings and notices.
Any further discussion? We have a second from Seth? Okay. Quick vote, Indra?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes.
Kathleen?
No.
Eric?
No.
Rick?
Yes.
Seth?
Yes.
Joel?
Yes.
Victoria?
No.
Okay. Motion passes 8-3. Aaron, you have direction?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is effective councils, and I'll hand it back over to Aaron for a presentation. I am going to step out.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor, Council. It's a pleasure for me to be able to be here today to talk to you about effective councils. As elected leaders, you carry the responsibility of shaping the direction of our city, not just through the policy, but through how you work together. The effectiveness of a council isn't just measured by the decisions it makes, but by the way it makes them through collaborative, respectful, and shared discussions. Today's presentation is about strengthening that foundation. We'll explore what makes conflicts effective, what distinguishes a high-performing team from a group of individuals, and how we can continue to better a culture that reflects the values of our community. Now, you've already taken an important step by reflecting on your own dynamics and identifying areas for growth. And that feedback sets the stage perfectly for where we're headed next. The conversation about the difference between a group and a team and what it means for this council to move forward together. So what we did is a few months back, the mayor, council president, myself, city attorney, sat down with the council members individually, and we discussed this topic, recognizing that we think we could do better. And we received some comments from council through those meetings, and they've been incorporated here in this presentation. So I want to first start off with that as a baseline. What have we sort of identified? What are our comments with regards to how we're interacting together? And I'm hoping that this will be sort of a team approach today, so I may be asking for your assistance and input throughout this presentation. I'd like to first start off with, these are the comments that we received from council on a one-on-one basis. And maybe Councilor King, if you could take this first slide, would you please read some of these? We have a number of comments that were made, and I've put these together. Could you please take the first slide?
Councilors need to come to the meeting prepared. You want me to read the whole thing?
Yes, please, go ahead.
Team building exercises, effective teams, conflict management, how to have effective dialogue and listen to each other. Councilors are feeling targeted by their peers. Stay on topic with discussions. Don't make it personal. Don't call people out or degrade opinions or action in a public meeting.
Thank you, Councilor King. Councilor Crone, would you take this slide, please?
The consensus, don't actively campaign against or undermine a council decision. Outside political environment has impacted council dynamic and decorum. Council needs to exemplify professional courtesy amongst our team. Our team meaning council, council staff, council public. Councilors are disparaging each other.
And Councilor Marshall, would you take this slide, please?
4?
Yeah.
Focus on value-added comments, reduce pontification, focus more on community impact and less on opinion, and take our time on important decisions.
Those are some very powerful statements and observations, and I want to thank you for your honesty and reflection in identifying some of the key areas for our potential growth. It is clear that this council is committed to improving how we work together. Council is committed to improving this. There's some steps that we need to do, and I'd like to have a discussion with you today about that. What you've shared reflects a desire to move beyond the individual roles towards something more unified and effective. And that brings us to the next part of our conversation, the difference between a group and a team. So let's take a moment to take a look at really what is a group and what is a team, and how are we operating? Are we operating as a group, or are we operating as a team? So I've got a picture here behind me, and is this a picture of a group or a team? Any takers? Both?
I would say a team.
A team? Okay, can you explain a little bit where you see the team in this one?
Well, it's just between two people. I don't see a group there. I see agreement between two, which would look like a team to me.
I see, yeah. So I think there is a team here, there's a team dynamic here, and there ultimately is a group dynamic and a group. So from my perspective, this picture identifies a group, and I would say every person on that plane that's sitting down in that picture is a group. If I was to ask somebody what the definition of a team member is, they'd say, oh, it's a group of people that have a goal. Well, that may not necessarily be what I've heard the definition of a team is, because there's a group of individuals here that are not working together collaboratively. The group of people is everyone sitting there wanting to get to Chicago on time by 1 p.m. That's that group. They've all bought a ticket to Chicago, they're going there. There is a team dynamic associated with this also. If you see there's airline staff, that is a team. That is a team. Their goal isn't necessarily just to get to Chicago, but they have a team approach where they need to rely on each other in order to provide services and safety for that group of people that have a shared goal, but the shared goal is an individual goal. So I've got two pictures here. I've got the Boston Marathon, and I've got a team of basketball players in this. And I think it's important to note that between a group and a team, I think there's three things that are important that exist in a team that does not exist in a group. The first is interdependency. We must create interdependent relationships. I can run a marathon and achieve my goal. My goal is to finish that 26.2 miles. I got to finish that goal. That's my individual goal. Everyone in the Boston Marathon is a group. They're a group of people trying to achieve a goal, but it's an individual goal. It's not an interdependent goal. Where if I'm a basketball team, I've got a goal, I'd like to win a game, but I can't do it myself. In order to be a team, you have to have a goal, and that interdependent goal. And then you need to have mutual accountability. And that's the difference between groups and teams. So the mutual accountability, one example is, I'll take two great individuals in their field, Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan. So Tiger Woods, one of the best golfers ever, is associated with the group. Both Tiger and Michael came on the scene wanting one goal. They wanted to win championships. Tiger Woods did it as a group. When you go out and you're on the PGA, you go out with a group of 4 people. You're one of 4 people. Every one of those people have a shared goal. That's to win the championship. But they don't have interdependency and they don't have mutual accountability. Tiger Woods was not relying on another individual to achieve his goal. versus Michael Jordan. Let's take a look at Michael Jordan. When he first came on the scene, he was voted MVP, he was voted best defensive player, he was an all-star, and it took him 6 years to achieve his goal. Why? Because he was part of a team. He had interdependent and mutual accountability associated with his group of individuals. So both individuals, top of their game, no one better at the time. One was able to achieve it as a group, but the other, you may be great, but if you're not great as a team, you may not achieve your goal. And that's an important point, is we may have sitting here on the dais the Michael Jordans of elected officials. We may have sitting here the Michael Jordans of department directors. But, I know, but if we don't act as a team, we're not going to win a championship. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today, because we can do better. So when it comes to the principles of a team, Robert Maddox is a very respected leader and an effective team builder. And he has 7 main principles that he highlights what makes an effective team. And I'm going to start with the shared goals. And while I go through and talk about these, I want us to sort of think about, are we totally nailing, are we the Michael Jordan as a team on some of these items? And which items may we need to work on a little bit? Starting out with shared understanding, that's really between the members and defining the team goal that can be achieved best with mutual support. Do we have that shared goal? Do we have that? I think we have parts of that in there, but are we nailing that one? The next one, with regards to shared ownership, members feel a shared ownership of their work and of the team's goals and are committed to the commonly established explicit or implicit rules. So we're associated with the rules of the group. Everyone can contribute their personal and professional competencies to the success of the team's goals. There is room to express ideas and opinions, and team members are making effort to understand each other. Nobody feels threatened by conflict, and conflict is viewed as a normal aspect of teamwork. When you have trust, conflict is a very positive thing. Out of conflict comes creative thinking. Out of diversity comes creative thinking. There is an atmosphere of trust and encouragement, and members are encouraged to improve their skills and their competencies. And the 7th item is decision-making processes, is participative, and no one is left out or unheard. What I like to do is move forward with the presentation, having a look at these principles and how we are engaging those and how we may be better. Just a question, though, out of council. Are any of those 7 principles something you think we totally nail and we can move on and focus on other ones? Is there any one item on there, or 3 or 5, that we've got nailed down? I see a couple heads shaking no. I think we can do some work on all of them.
I think we know what our roles are. I think.
Yes, and I want to highlight roles because that's extremely important to understand your roles. And we have good guidelines for that, and part of my presentation talks about that. So interdependent teams. Who are our teams? Anybody have any, what teams do you as an elected official have? I've got a list of a few. I'll give you a hint. Council's 1. What's another interdependent team that you have in order for us to accomplish our goals?
This can be participation.
Council and staff. Oh, sorry.
Council and community.
Council and staff, correct, and council and community. Oh my gosh, do you guys know the answers to this already? Yep.
Council and other officials.
Council and other officials, yep. You got another team too, your advisory committees. They're there to help you and inform you on important policy decisions. These are all interdependent teams, so it's not just council here on the dais that we're talking about. It's not council staff. It's not the Super Bowl that we're at every Wednesday night or even Mondays. Because I tell you, as a team, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just the decision you make, but it's the way you make the decision. And we have an opportunity to lead by example and show what true leadership is for our community. So habits of highly effective councils, AKA teams. So what do you know so far? We know a little bit difference between what a group and a team is. We know Grants Pass wants to be a team. We had that discussion. You provided some very good input, honest input on how we're operating right now. We have a general understanding, taking a look at the 7 practices and principles of what makes a good team. Now we get to take a look at how we can strive to implement some of those. All right, I want to go through, and this is adapted from the 10 Habits of Highly Effective Governing Bodies, breaking it down into mission, vision, clarity of roles, organization and process, decision-making, and then celebrating success. The first item is mission, vision, and goals. So as council, your #1 job is to determine and achieve the desires of your citizens and plan for Grants Pass's future. You have to not only meet today's challenges, but you also have to have a plan for the challenges that we face tomorrow. Once you know your vision, you can help develop long-range goals and bring those desires to life. And I think we're doing this. Take a look at the board behind me. We have very clear mission, vision, and goals. We have a work plan that supports your strategic plan. We have a budget that supports the work plan in your strategic plan that reflects council's goals. We also have, when you're looking at goals, a shared constituency that you have to consider when you're working with a team. Because although you may be providing policy direction for the city of Grants Pass itself as an organization, but you have other players that affect your constituents. You have the federal government, you have the state government, you have county, you have school boards, you have library districts. Those are all competing and or partnership type of organizations that play a role in your shared constituency and how they affect your constituents. Next, I'd like to highlight clarify roles. So really, we talked about it, Councilor Cronin mentioned this. What is your role as a council member? And where do those roles and where are they outlined? Currently, right now, they're outlined in the charter. You've got also, it's outlined in council rules of procedures and attributes of council manager form of government associated with the charter. So let's go through and define our roles and make sure we have a clear understanding of our roles and responsibilities. With that, I want to highlight that in 2 ways. Most governing bodies, whether through their charter or statutes or ordinance, have clear definition of their function. The performance component, however, must be defined within the team through discussions and mutual definition of those behaviors and practices that are expected for you to follow. And that's an important piece. Just like the policy direction that you provide and the decisions you make is an important function, but the performance of how you do that is a very important piece, and it is high on an optics standpoint. So I want to go through and talk about our roles, both from a function perspective and a performance perspective. So from effective teams, I want to highlight what's the role of the mayor? What's the role of council president, council, advisory committees, city manager, and your council staff partnership? The mayor. The function of the mayor. They are the chair of council meetings and they preside over the deliberations of council, and they also vote in case of a tie. The mayor shall have the authority to preserve order, enforce the rules of council. The mayor must sign all records of council decision and serves as the political head for the government. The mayor is primarily responsible for leadership, communication, monitoring, and representing the city. The mayor is the facilitator or the enforcer and the political head of the city. If there are issues with council, it is the mayor and the council president who looks at that as one that does the enforcement and oversees council. From a performance perspective, they advocate for the public. They're the leader of council in the community. The mayor is a servant, and the mayor holds high ethical standards. From a function standpoint, let's take a look at the council president and their roles. Functioning, the council president presides over the council and performs the duties of the mayor in the absence of the mayor. And we just recently experienced that for the past couple of weeks. Thank you, council president, for stepping in that role. You are also the primary media contact for council along with the mayor. Normally, as an example, if someone from a news channel reaches out to me and has a question about the operation of our water treatment plant, I don't have a problem, or having Jason have a problem, of doing an interview. But if they call and they say, hey, I want to know why this decision was made, or what are you going to be doing on this policy issue, I always refer them to the mayor or the council president, as that function of that council president is to be the primary media contact. They have a role in agenda setting, they represent the council in their interests, and they help facilitate the city manager evaluation. From a performance perspective, we've identified that the council president does regular outreach to council members to obtain interest to discuss with the mayor and or the council members. That's more of a soft skill issue, where that is an expectation or a group norm that this council has. We provide special focus on meeting efficiency and effectiveness to assist the mayor in facilitating meetings and council conduct according to council norms. So if the mayor is trying to facilitate the meeting and the meeting may be going a certain way, the council president's role is also to help back the mayor up and help regain or maintain order, and or if there is an issue where a council member needs to be talked about with regards to something that occurred at a council meeting, primarily it's the mayor and the council president that will do that. From a council perspective, you have a number of different functions. You are the legislative and policy-making body. You serve as the liaison to the community, and you're that communication link to advisory committees. You are the financial authority. Council is the one that adopts the budget. You have a budget committee that helps you do that. That is a group of equal number group of citizens, but ultimately you as a council, one of the most important things you do is you do adopt the budget. You are the final land use authority. You're the employer of the city manager. Your responsibility is there to represent the citizens, and you provide vision and set goals that then we implement a work plan and then define the budget. From a performance perspective, council serves as a leader. You're a role model for maintaining the spirit of civility and cooperation. You help set the tone for civil discourse and productive problem solving. As an educator, to provide public information, as an interpreter of public opinion, you bring those opinions to the table for discussion. As a listener, to solicit input from the public. As a leader, to foster a sense of community and energize and engage citizens. You provide clear policy direction, and you operate under high ethical standards. You have advisory committees, and you use them. We have around 9 or so plus 10 advisory committees, and you utilize those for multiple reasons. And you also have task forces, which would also fall under these categories, where council appoints and recognizes certain committees and commissions to help do additional policy research for you, or get community input that may be a little too rigorous for the dais. Maybe you need to dive into in more detail, and advisory committees and our task forces are a good mechanism for that, to help from an efficiency perspective and to help get additional public input. Performance, we usually do some kind of annual analysis or recommendations for strategic planning, aiding council when performing public policy and help. You'll sometimes ask advisory committees to give you recommendations. You get motions from your advisory committees and you discuss those at either workshops or business meetings. They serve to help build public consensus. We have our public safety task force that you have put in place, that was sort of put in place for that spirit. You also give a community a forum for discussion in greater depth, as advisory committees do. Another item that advisory committee does is it pulls experts within the community to help you make policy decisions. Moving from elected officials and those appointed advisory committees, you move into council, manager, and staff. What are the roles of that within our team environment? From a function perspective, the city manager is the administrative head of the organization, sees that all ordinances are enforced and that we implement council policies. Act as the purchasing agent and budget officer, sits with council on the dais but does not vote shall have no control over council. The city manager does not control council. Any control from that standpoint comes from the mayor and the council president. From a performance perspective, there are a number of items the city manager is looked at. Anything ranging from the management of the organization, financial management, relations with council, leadership, professionalism, are items from a performance perspective. From a council staff partnership perspective, if you go back to the roles we've just discussed, it's clear that what we have is a symbiotic relationship in order to accomplish our goals. In order for council to accomplish the goals and the policies they've established, we have a symbiotic relationship with staff that we can get together and accomplish those things. We are a team. Yes, council does establish the policies and principles for the city, but it does so with the input and guidance of city manager and staff. And yes, the city manager implements those policies, but in developing the policies, the council may define the parameters it seeks to achieve. So we are a true partnership. Recognizing and clarifying the roles that we have and trying to operate within those. The next aspect of an effective team is making sure that you've got good organized processes. So, council rules of procedure. Exemplifying leadership and teamwork. In my experience, this is where I see teams sort of break down and where communication issues begin. Because councils and teams want to be collegial, they want to be somewhat informal and not buried in rules like Congress is. But when we drift from the rules, even for solid reasons like congeniality, we run the risk of deterioration. Deterioration includes interrupting people. Have we had that before? Multiple people talking over each other. Question time turns into debate time. Facilitators become participants. So there are reasons why you have roles and responsibilities in place. From an effective teams and organization process, it's important to have clear rules and procedures and allocate the appropriate time and energy appropriately to that. So having clear rules and procedures for council means you've got a purpose for doing business. A business meeting is for you to do business, and you should have rules and procedures in order to do that, to do it in the most effective and efficient way. And so we do that. We want to try to respect all of these elements and the necessity to conduct business in an orderly fashion. We're going to be talking about some of that after this presentation in some additional rules that you're wanting to discuss. When it comes to the 4 areas where we should allocate time, which is an item that was discussed, I wanted to put this slide in here because there was a comment from council when we were doing individual questions on how things were going. Some council members made a comment that we need to make sure we allocate our time appropriately and come prepared. I think from an allocation of time perspective, you really play in 4 realms: goal setting, exploration analysis, disposition and legislation, and community relations. When it comes to goal setting, your allocation of time should be in the form of making sure we do a strategic plan. It may be a 2-year plus plan, but we should do at least annual checkups, and we'll be doing so this year. Last year we did our strategic planning session. This year will be a checkup, and likely the following year we'll do a larger annual strategic planning session. Your explanation and analysis. That's your work sessions and your study sessions. Are we allocating the appropriate time to our work sessions and study sessions? These are intended to help counselors and experts confer with one another so you can make informed policy decisions when you go into those business meetings. And then the legislation aspect of it, these are your public meetings. These are the meetings where you make those decisions, you pass those ordinances and those resolutions. And for the majority of that, the big decisions have already been discussed. They've been discussed in a workshop, so you've worked out a lot of the kinks to where you're really honing in on what your direction is going to be at that policy legislative meeting, which is your business meeting. And then community relations is another aspect for you spending time and where you should take a look at your time. While it sometimes pains people to hear, you work for me. We really do work for your constituents. We are all here to work for the constituents. And our work represents what the community members' needs are. And it does not mean that we do exactly what they say, because sometimes we can't, or there's other things that are involved, but we try to engage with our citizenry and get their input before important decisions are made. And that's where some of that time needs to be allocated. Decision making. I'm going to ask for some council assistance on this decision making. So when it comes to decision making, this is an important piece, and I think this is a piece looking at some of what council was discussing and the feedback that we got in the very beginning of the presentation, where we're having some struggle and where I think we've got the best room for improvement. And that is in mastering small group decision making and understanding and demonstrating the elements of teamwork. So when it comes to that, mastering small group decision making, there's really three things to look at. Your interpersonal skills, the ability to work and interact with others. How do you personally work and interact with others? Your task skills, which is the knowledge to do the job. Do we have the training and the knowledge to be able to deal with conflict well, to be able to make informed decisions? Do we have that right information in front of us? And then our rational skills, our ability to deal with issues and problems rationally and in collegiate ways. So on December 18th, 2009, Council adopted Resolution 5618. So this is where we're getting a lot of this information from. These are adopted norms that Council has in place. Those were updated in 2019 with another resolution, and it's supposed to provide an opportunity for Council to make sure that we've got our interpersonal interactions in a leadership form that's high performing. And so I've got a number of slides here, and what I'd like is I would like it if we could sort of one at a time sort of go down the row, and I'd like us to read some of these slides because these are your rules. And I don't necessarily want to read your rules to you, but I'd like to hear you sort of express the rules that we have adopted. So I don't know if we can maybe start with Councilor Nicholas, if you could sort of go through and read, take a look at the slide and read that to us.
Yes. Council recognizes the business of the community is best served by individuals who respect differences of opinion and are gracious in decision-making. As such, the council adopts this statement to guide interpersonal communications and council relations among ourselves, with and among staff, and with the larger community. We use direct, honest, respectful communications. We share our opinions in a spirit of goodwill so issues can be dealt with productively and proactively. Strive to make our concerns or interests clear and understandable to others.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Pell, would you take this one, please?
We listen fully to others with respect, interest, and openness, giving each an opportunity to have their say. We recognize and honor differences in both values and style. We focus on issues rather than personalities. We come to meetings prepared and stay on topic. We work to keep each other informed, avoiding blindsiding and surprises.
Councilor Cronin, would you take that one?
We recognize that mutual learning is valuable, but best shared in private to resolve conflict. We are specific when discussing difficult matters, dealing with only one issue at a time. We endeavor to support decision even when we disagree. We acknowledge and celebrate the successes of our city.
Councilor Schogel, will you take this one, please?
Certainly. The City Council desires all adversary commission/committee members to understand and operate under the spirit of consensus decision-making. Consensus decision-making helps create high-quality decisions with strong support for follow-through. This is a cooperative process whereby team members work as a group to develop a solution and agree to support whatever decision is made in the best interests of the whole. It requires asking for input from each person on the team. carefully considering that feedback and making an earnest effort to address any concerns that are raised.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Riker, continuing on the consensus decision-making, will you take a look at those bullet points, please, for us?
I have the opportunity to express my views and/or my opinion. I believe that I am heard and understood by everyone. If I were making this decision on my own, I would not necessarily go in the direction the group has chosen. However, because I believe that I am heard and understood by everyone, and I am unable to move them in my position, I am willing to accept the group's position now and in the future.
Thank you. I know that was longer, but that was an important one also from a consensus perspective. That's one of those things that council has that we're supposed to try to exhibit and follow as a council norm. And all of those, I think, are extremely important. And one of those things that is important also is it goes back to the council president and the mayor, is when those things may not be followed all the time, it is an opportunity for us to take a look at those things, not necessarily on the dais, but maybe off screen, where the council president, the mayor, and myself, or whatever, can have a discussion with those to try to reinforce those behaviors. And then the third item is celebrating success. And I think it's important that we just don't pass by a vote a policy, but we really should take a look at assessing how we're doing. This is one item that we haven't done for a while, but you may want to consider, is doing community surveys. We used to do those years ago on an annual basis, and we ask the same questions each year so we can get a benchmark and try to figure out how we're doing when it comes to implementing policy. But making sure that when we ultimately do adopt policy, we try to get feedback on the results. Practice continued personal learning and development is an important piece. Learning as an individual and a group is important. There's a lot of individual trainings that we could be taking, and there's some group trainings that we can do. League of Oregon Cities is a great opportunity to do a little bit of both. It takes a lot of work to develop a good team. It usually just doesn't happen immediately. And communication is a real key tool to any relationship, including the relationships found on council and between council and staff and your teams. What you say may not be what is heard, and what is heard may not be what you say. And intent is not often properly communicated in words that we use today. Communication becomes particularly difficult in a council environment because policy and politics often result in conflict. So if knowing that we're dealing with conflict so much, I think it's extremely important for us to continue to build as a team and to work together on that. Some suggestions I have moving forward that I would suggest council for consideration is that we do some team building and some training. And we could do that through a number of these things here. One of my first recommendations would be maybe we take a look at the 5 dysfunctions of a team and we do a workshop on that, a half-day workshop. And we go through that process to start to build that team. And that maybe would be the first thing we do in partnership with the strategic plan review. Maybe we can, I would recommend that we do one of these items that may be of interest to you, and we incorporate that in our strategic plan for the first of the year. And we meet with your advisory committees and those kind of things. But it's important, if we want to be the best that we can, I know from an executive team standpoint, we're always wanting to learn, we're always wanting to do better. Bradley Clark did a great session, I forget where it was, a leads program session. And I saw when he came back, the information he had, the invigoration, it was awesome. So trainings are important and they're good. Continuing learning is extremely important, not only for myself and my colleagues, but also for you as elected leaders in the community. So with that concludes my presentation on effective teams. I do have later on in this, after this presentation, if you don't have any questions on this, we have another agenda item that sort of falls in line with this also. But again, I hope this sort of clarifies what our roles, responsibilities are, that it's important that we have a good, strong mission and vision, that we have processes in place, that we continually learn and try to make sure that we're doing our group norms and that we have good decision-making in place and we celebrate our successes.
Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate your presentation, and as going forward and trying to always make us an effective team and effective leaders for our community, I believe that continuing education is key to that, and I believe that your presentation hits the mark of continuing our education and shoring up some of our responsibilities and making sure that we are, proceeding forward as an effective team and effective leaders. With that, I'll bring it back to council. Does council have any specific questions in regards to the presentation that was just given? Indra?
Not a question, but I very much appreciate the clarifying roles. I don't know if we got that during orientation as well, but very nicely laid out, and good job on that.
Thank you, and that's a great comment that I'll take. Make sure that that is highlighted in the next orientation when we have, I think that's important, so I appreciate that.
And I have to agree with Indra 100%. One reason why, I've actually pushed for this to be presented to council and to continue our education and striving to become an effective team is I believe that we're not professionals. These are elected officials that are volunteering their time. I don't think a single one of us is a professional politician up here, and we do have some seasoned council members that have been here for a long time that I personally use as reference points and try to learn from their experience. And so I think continuing this education and the strive to work towards an effective team is I think it's just going to make us a better representation for our community and a better representation for our city. Any further questions? Kathleen?
Well, it's not really a question, but a statement. I think that it is difficult to become an effective team. It's not automatic. And so I appreciate any input and clarification. I think this handout was really helpful, and I hope we can proceed with some of the things suggested in it.
Rob?
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said on the dais about this. I'd just like to add one thing that I think would be fairly simple for us to implement, is that I believe that we should have a workshop at the beginning of the year that features our committee and commission chairs, basically so they can give us a state of their committee or commission, because that can affect our budget process for sure, especially if it's a year that we've got to consider cutting anything. And it would also reaffirm our respect and appreciation for the work they do as part of our team. We didn't do that last year. I know we pretty much did it every other year that I've been involved with council. I know that the committee and commissions do appreciate it. It does help them focus because they've got to come up with statements to make as a group. It helps them focus and work better as a team. And I think it would really help the council understand where they're at. And again, prior to our budgeting process, I think it would be good for us to hear from our committee and commission chairs. And I think it would be as simple as scheduling a workshop to allow them to all come in and address us.
I agree with Rob.
So recognizing that, would council be open to us for strategic planning this year, which is going to be another review of our successes, taking a look at what we think we could accomplish in this upcoming year, include also in that process an opportunity to have discussions with all your advisory committee chairs and projects, and then also a learning session and a team building session with one of the items that I highlighted in the previous slide that we would facilitate for you, and have that sort of a combination strategic planning session at the first of the year?
I think you got consensus
That
there.
would be great. I'm so excited about that.
And I think you're getting the sentiment from council here is that they're I mean, personally, I'm yearning for this continuing education and this basically consensus of trying to work as an effective team. Eric.
Just a question. Rob brought up that we've done these things in the past. What happened this time to where that didn't get done, or that isn't happening, or why did it end, I guess?
Well, our strategic planning was truncated last year. It used to be like a 3 or 3.5 day process. So half a day or maybe a whole day was on the committees and commissions. This year we decided to do it, I guess, either less expensively or more efficiently. So there was way less time devoted to it.
Yeah, we had some pressing issues at the beginning of the year too, when strategic planning was coming along, and I believe that staff, I think I was pushing staff completely, and was getting a little pushback saying that we had their agenda was full already. So yeah, but this is something we all jumped into the deep end of the pool, and I mean it is just very awesome that you guys are kind of seeing, your eyes are wide open now, and you're seeing that anything that we can do to help us be a more effective team and more effective leaders for our community is, it's awesome that you guys are feeling the same way. So with that, I had Indra, Victoria, and Joel. Indra?
Yes, it was touched on in here, but I think what is critical is effective communication, and I would really like to see more focus going forward on what that looks like and what that is, and communicating with one another effectively.
Victoria, and then Joel?
I think effective communication is important, and we can do a better job definitely with that. I would say there were a couple of things in here, although I agree with the overall sentiment to try to get council to be more effective. I am not necessarily in favor of the consensus form of decision-making, especially with elected people. So I'm not necessarily in favor of that sort of a process to make decisions, because in a representative democracy, I just don't think it works that well. But I also understand that we're kind of different, we're a city council and we're not the United States, Senate or House or anything like that. But one of the reasons that a lot of people asked for this to happen was because people aren't treated well sometimes, and so the only thing I would like to see come out of this is that people have a renewed sense of just some professional decorum, and just maybe seeing the humanity in the people that were also elected. So that would be my main goal. Because we're not going to agree on policy. There is a definite difference of opinion in policy on the dais. So, and that's probably good and healthy for our city. And so being able to work through that in a way that makes it, that's professional. The one thing that I didn't see in this that I thought should be going forward in something that we decide as a council is that we're not going to agree. And that's okay, and that's probably good. But we can agree to not disparage the majority decision of council publicly. That happens. And maybe that's something that we could look at just doing a little bit more in a more professional manner. It's okay to say I disagree. I would not want to take away anyone's First Amendment right, but to say it in a more professional manner would be good. That's the only thing that I could say that I would like to see come out of it, because I just, once again, I don't like the idea of consensus building, and because we are not going to agree on policy, but we can do so when we do disagree in a much more effective manner that makes us look good in the public. So that's what I'd like to say about that.
Yeah, I have to comment on that. I didn't see the presented information as being, pushing council to be consensus-driven. I think that the key that I take out of the presentation that Aaron just presented was professionalism and common courtesy. So, yeah, I don't believe you're pushing the narrative for consensus building whatsoever, because you're 8 individuals with 8 individual minds that were elected to do a job. But you do, the only consensus you have realistically is that you are effectively governing for, I mean, what's our population now, 38,000 people as a whole. So, I mean, that would be the only consensus, but I don't believe that your presentation was pushing towards consensus driven. So, with that, I still had Joel.
I just wanted to briefly answer Eric's question. You know, the strategic planning was abbreviated at the request of the previous council. The strategic planning being cut short was done at the request of the previous council.
Any further questions? All right, Aaron, I'll hand it back over to you to proceed.
All right, thank you, Mayor, Council. I greatly appreciate your viewpoint and your willingness to move forward with this. All right, next item on the agenda is procedure for conduct of business. This is part of what we were just sort of talking, make sure that we're clear on our rules and how we proceed and our group norms. So this item is here based on some discussions that we've had and some minor tweaks that we were going to make a few months ago to our order of business. And we brought it forward in council to a business meeting, and council said, hey, we'd like to have a discussion about this. So that's why I'm here today with you, is to have that discussion. So we have a resolution 24-7457 that was adopted, and it has basically, it has a number of sections in it. It's a long resolution, but it talks about the rules and agenda setting and order of business and public comment, and it goes down and it has 20 different sections. But ultimately, we're not going to be discussing all 20 different sections unless you so wanted to have that discussion. We're really opening it up to what our current practices are and how that might change. So on section 6, there is a piece that says the city manager shall prepare the agenda, and that the mayor and council president and city manager will discuss the content of the agenda at the semi-monthly meetings. Now, we've modified that to be monthly, but our current rules by resolution says semi-monthly. So that was one of the things we're going to clean up, is to just have it represent what actions we're doing today. The other item is we've changed under section 7 order of business. There is an item that it states, here's our order of business, and we were going to remove opportunity to remove to review public comment and review emails. Those are done under matters for mayor, council, and staff. So we've taken those out as a potential thing for you to approve. Also, the council will meet each Monday. We struck out or Tuesday if Monday is a holiday at 11:45 to add that is prior to a Wednesday council meeting at 11:45 because there's sometimes that we do not meet technically on a Tuesday at that holiday. So that was just another, and these are just house cleaning items. And then I think ultimately through the house cleaning items, council may have wanted to discuss or open up more discussion on this. So I'm just going over the house cleaning items for you and then turning it over to you for further discussion. Under public comment, what we do is it currently reads that comment cards will be received up until the public comment section of the meeting. And our current practice is comment cards will be received up to 6 p.m. the day of the meeting. So we're just changing that. Again, these are house cleaning items. Public comment, the mayor or chair will call on citizens during public comment. Individuals will be given 2 minutes to speak. Council may ask 2 questions of every citizen. Citizens will be given 1 minute to respond, and that is currently within our language. And then call to action is at your discretion. Again, I'm just proposing the house cleaning items. That was what I was here for today. If council wants to take a broader discussion, that's up to council. Those are just suggested house cleaning items based on our current practice. And I turn it over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Aaron. Any questions? Rob?
No question. I had a comment.
Okay, any further, any questions in regards to the house cleaning items? Kathleen and then Indra?
So all along, it's been part of our policy to be able to ask the citizens questions after they make their comments. I wasn't aware of that. I haven't been seeing that happen.
Yeah, so that was an item that was put into place, I think it was in 19 or something like that, somewhere around there, that was added, that council could ask a question of the public comment people.
Now, is that in a specific topic, or is that in regular public comment?
No, that's just as a regular follow-up.
During general public comment
Yeah.
at the end of the meetings.
So I can add more to that.
Go ahead, Rob.
So it actually was 2021 was when that came in. And the reason that I suggested we bring that in was because there were times when somebody at the podium seemed to be extremely knowledgeable on a particular subject, and they seemed to possibly know more than anybody on the dais, or possibly a lot more than anybody on the staff on a given subject. So it just seemed to be, once that a person kind of was recognized as possibly having something really valuable, or could be valuable to council, it was thought that in that circumstance, it would be smart or wise for us to be able to get more information from them at the moment, because it could even affect what we were doing. So it was when somebody seems to, my thinking was, when I first suggested this, was if somebody appears as if they may have something that would really be valuable for council to know, for us to be able to ask a question right then and there, so we can get greater clarity.
I got further questions. I got Indra and then Victoria. Indra?
So on section 8, meeting dates, so scratching out or Tuesday if Monday is a holiday prior to the Wednesday. So if Monday is a holiday, what would happen then? We would still meet Wednesday but not have a workshop?
That's correct. That's sort of a practice. That's sort of what we've been practicing to some degree. So we're trying to represent what your practice is. What it does say, though, instead, though, is that you are meeting on the Tuesday following a holiday, and that's not been our practice reason in the past few years or whatever. It's been that we have not been meeting on the Tuesday, but it's been just a holiday, an extended day off for council.
Oh, because we have been meeting, or we met at least once on a
You sometimes do, and
Tuesday.
you have the ability to do that, yes.
Okay,
It doesn't
but that
preclu-
hasn't
doesn't
been
preclude you
practiced.
from having to do that. It's just stating, it's just pulling that statement out that you will be meeting on a Tuesday after a Monday.
Okay, so basically, just to clarify, we wouldn't meet prior to the Wednesday workshop?
Correct.
If there's a holiday on Monday?
Unless you asked for a special workshop.
Gotcha.
Further questions, Victoria?
Yeah, back to slide 7, opportunity to review public comment and review emails. I like that. I always put notes down, but by the time we come around to matters for mayor and council, the audience is gone, so you aren't able to address something someone said during public comment. So I would like to have more of that, actually. That might be, so I wouldn't, maybe we should look at not striking that.
That's up for you guys to have discussion after questions. Any further questions in regards to the information presented? All right, seeing none, thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor, Council.
We will bring it back to the dais for council discussion. Rob?
Yeah, on slide 9, I believe we might have discussed this before, but to me, it's a real impediment to public comment to make the cards come in by 6 o'clock. I mean, a lot of people know that it could be a couple of hours before we get to public comment in a meeting if the council action items are going to be complicated. And so that would basically mean that if someone wants to say something in public comment, they've got to be here by 6 o'clock or maybe earlier to get a seat. They've got to be here hours before they need to speak. So to me, that's an impediment to public comment, and I don't see the plus. I don't see the advantage to that. Why would we make the public go through that? It'd be, easy for somebody. I mean, there is a way to continue to take comment cards or their name cards right up until the deadline of public comment. That wouldn't be very difficult to implement. And again, I think it would show a little more respect to the public, and it also make it easier for them to take part in public comment rather than have to get here potentially hours before it.
Thanks for that comment, Rob. I actually had conversations with staff, and from my interactions as previous counselor back in a long time ago, it does get a little hectic to bring it all the way up to the time of public comment. Karen is a facilitator of counting those all up and figuring out, how we deal with that. But then I have to bring it back to full center. Your Wednesday night meetings are business meetings. As a council, you are affording general public comment as a courtesy to the community. That meeting on Wednesday nights is for business at hand. There is a number of councils within the proximity of Grants Pass that don't even offer general public comment. So if you guys want to have that conversation and make a group decision to bring those public comment cards all the way up to public comment, you can have that discussion. Has no bearing to me, but realistically, I made the decision when I joined up in January that we would go back to previous council of setting the deadline of 6 p.m. to take in comment cards, just so the staff could do their business at hand during the meeting and wasn't affected by that. But that's a discussion you guys can have coming up here soon. Any further discussion? Do you want to discuss that now?
Mayor?
Yes.
I do have a comment. I frequently get phone calls prior to the meeting asking to sign up for public comment, so I actually signed them up, and so they don't have to be here first thing in the meeting, so I do accommodate
And
that.
you also entertain emails previous in the day, as what it's always been policy. So, but yeah, if you guys want to discuss that and you want to bring it forward to change that before we do cleanup, here's the time to do it. Victoria?
I would say just making that clear so the public knows they're able to email in or call in beforehand, because then they don't have to be here at 6. I think that would be sufficient.
Yeah, it is posted on our website.
Further discussion, Indra?
I would think that's very unfair that someone rushes over and they're 2 minutes late and they can't comment, but if they go home and someone can comment online up to the time, I don't find that fair at all. Also, I get that it's hectic, but we do serve the public, and this is their one time. They can write emails, but how often do we actually read their emails or comments in the public, in a public meeting for everyone to hear? Because a lot of people watch our public meetings that don't ever come in person to that, and so they look at that and what we're doing. So a lot of emails, we don't read those all publicly. We know them, okay, but they don't. So this is the one chance for someone who cares enough to come to a meeting and speak what's on their heart to us in person. And I think that's incredibly powerful, and I would like to continue hearing it. And if it's a little hectic, I think it's worth that to hear what they have to say and take them up till the public comment time. That's my opinion.
So is that your opinion, or do you want to change that in section 10 public comment?
I would want to change that.
Okay.
To keep it the
So
way it is.
Indra is saying that she wants to keep, for section 10, there's a suggestion to keep public comment open up until receiving cards all the way up until the public comment section of the meeting. Kathleen?
I'd just like to get some feedback from Karen if that's difficult or how that affects you.
The only time that that's difficult is because we only allow 30 minutes for public comment. I'd have to keep all the cards to allow the mayor to know, if we're reducing the time that they have to speak or have that decision made. But other than that, it's not. And I do, Indra, I did want to clarify that if people call in and want to before public comment, it's before 6 o'clock. Yeah, it's not up to, it's before 6.
I misunderstood you.
Victoria?
I think that when the public does come and they see the business or they hear what's happening on a particular item, they do have the ability to come up and speak on that issue. So there is opportunity for the public to speak on issues that are important to them that come up in front of the council as they come up during the business meeting.
So Indra has suggested that we do not amend section 10 and we leave it to be open to receive public comments all the way up until the public comment section. Anybody else in favor of that? Rob? So Rick is just out for a second. So basically, let's just put it this way. Section 10, public comments, it has been suggested to not amend that section and have it read to receive public comments, public comment cards all the way up until the public comment. Thumbs up or thumbs down? No, to receive them. So we would not be amending the section 10. That is what on the dais right now.
So wait a minute, so there's a line through it.
Mm-hmm.
You still need a little more clarity, Clint, sorry. So
Maybe it'd be better to do the affirmative and just do a thumbs up for how it's presented. Which would be the...
Okay. So you have a current house cleaning item for section 10, which would be as read on the screen right there. So I would get council's opinion on whether to change it as it reads on the screen. Thumbs up.
With the strike-through or without the strike-through?
As we're reading it there with the strike-through or without?
So I want to get council sentiment if you want to change section 10 to read as it reads on the screen.
With the strike-through or without the strike-through?
As it reads on the screen with the strike-through. Yep.
So this,
So it would be, we'd be taking out the words that have the line through them, or we'd be leaving those words in. And we'd be removing the strike through, would be leaving it the same.
So these sections were presented to you today as house cleaning items. They would be amended as that was shown on the screen. So the strike through would actually be meaning that that verbiage would be taken out and it would be replaced by the highlighted verbiage there.
thank you.
Indra had made preference to go back to the way it was. Aaron said, let's affirm whether we want to change with the house cleaning item or not. So basically, you will be voting on a thumbs up means that that section 10 will be amended as it is on the screen. Go ahead, Victoria.
I think that it is important probably before people vote to realize that if we do put it, if we look at it the way that it is on the screen, that we actually might end up having less public comment. Because if we have too many people who come and just all of a sudden want to speak, it's going to reduce the amount of time that they can speak, potentially, so that they wouldn't have their 2 minutes. They might just have one, because we only have 30 minutes for public comment. And I think because people are able to come up and to speak on any agenda item that is on our agenda, that gives everybody ample opportunity. So it may reduce, it wouldn't always, but it potentially could reduce public comment rather than expand it if we take public comment up until public comment.
Rick?
So Karen, I have a question for you. Under the current rules, how often does somebody come and present you with a card after 6 o'clock? And the second part, is it a real challenge and a real disruption to your activity during that meeting?
The first part rarely, I think because everybody's gotten used to our rules. And so every once in a while, I'll have one person that I say no, but it's very rare. And I mean, I'm paying attention to you and to that. So it's just a matter of, you know, my awareness of somebody standing there with a blue card.
Thank you for your comments.
And I know Showen always shows up about 5 minutes late, so he's always disgruntled because he can't get in, but, okay. So I need council sentiment whether you want to change section 10 to read as it is on the screen, excluding the striked out text and replacing it with the highlighted text. Indra.
A couple things. So I have a question to Karen because it has been receiving up until public comment time. So have we not been following that?
We've been, the reason why these are here is your group norm and the way we've been practicing this is what is highlighted as change. So we have been up to 6 p.m. the day of the meeting.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought we were practicing as it's written. So
No.
thank you. Wow. Okay, my other point was that council has the prerogative to extend public comment time should there be more people we wish to hear than in the 30 minutes, is my understanding.
That
So as written, section 10, the public comment period will be limited to no more than 30 minutes. In special circumstances, council has the discretion to extend the public comment period. So I'm assuming that that means that on the special circumstance, on that special night, if council made a decision at the beginning of the meeting, then that time period could be extended. Currently, section 10 reads as it is on the screen. So I would go through section A and decide whether you want to change that or not. If you wanted to further discuss section B, then you can definitely do that. But if we can make a decision on section A, then that might proceed us to go to section B. Yes.
My point was just it wouldn't throttle public comment time. That was all my point.
So as it reads, you would have to make a special circumstance every single meeting to go further than 30 minutes. Which then again, if you extend the receiving comment cards all the way up until general public comment at the end of the meeting, then we would probably have to take a 5-10 minute recess and evaluate that on the number of cards every single meeting. Go ahead.
How often have we extended public comment time in this year?
I want to say maybe once.
Yeah. I believe so. And usually it comes by that it'll be made a decision at the beginning of the meeting if you had a controversial topic and you see if the house is packed. I mean, we have had packed houses where people are standing and then we have to overflow them or whatever. So basically these rules are in place at this moment in time. We need to make a decision whether you want to amend Rule A, Section A, and then if you want to discuss Section B, we can do that. So I'll bring it back to council one more time. Do you want to change section 10, section A, as it reads on the screen, striking out, removing the text with the strikeout, and replacing it with the bolded text? Thumbs up or thumbs down? So I got 1, 2, 3 down, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up. Okay, so council's consensus is to amend section 10A as it's written on the screen.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, so let's go back to section 6 was some house cleaning items of agenda setting, changing agenda setting from semi-monthly to monthly. Do you have any comments in regards to that? Indra?
Yes, I spoke to Aaron a while ago when that happened, and to me, it's just a matter of feeling included and in the conversation. And I think once a month, and I get the reason for it, Clint, I get that it's a lot of work and a lot of time to do 2-a-month agenda setting, but I think it's important prior to meetings where we're going to be making decisions and putting things on the agenda, that it's important to meet to review the agenda before that meeting. And also, I've been to one agenda setting meeting this year, so it kind of, I understand that I could come to as many as I want to, I guess, but I don't see a need for several counselors to be there. And it just feels to me, and it might be only me, it just feels exclusionary and like kind of a loss of communication and inclusion in the agenda setting and in what's in general going on with the council.
Okay, you guys should have received an email today in regards to council community connections and KJO radio talk show schedules. At the bottom of that schedule is agenda setting schedule with delineated third-party council members' participation as listed through the month. So that agenda, or that invitation is designated to each counselor as each month goes by, and as you stated, as we already stated, that any counselor has the ability to attend the agenda setting meetings at any time. As soon as the agenda setting meeting is over and done with, that agenda is actually redistributed out to all counselors, I think in a day or so afterwards. So that correspondence and that communication has always been there and is always there. It is incumbent on you guys to read emails and keep abreast on that stuff, but the communication has always been there. So that brings us, yes, Victoria.
I sort of began more on what Indra is saying, that we should have it twice a month. And then, however, as it's gone along, I think it might be better to keep it once a month. And the reason being is because we have the ability to address the agenda at every meeting anyway. So every workshop and every business meeting, there is the agenda. So there's basically agenda setting at every workshop and every meeting as well. And it just seems to set the agenda. Mayor kind of swayed my opinion on this when he was saying, we need to set the agenda for the month, and if we do it twice a month, then it gets too confusing and it actually can hurt the agenda process and not help it, but also that counselors are able to address it at each meeting. I went, oh, okay, I guess that is enough time. So I started out on Indra thinking we need to do it twice a month, the way that it had been done in the past, but changed my mind because this does seem to be a little bit more efficient.
Any further comments? Kathleen?
Well, I just think that we have the ability to always check in and see what the agenda is going to be also before a meeting. And when we see it get changed, we have the opportunity to call in and check on that. And I don't see it as a hindrance.
Okay, further discussion? I have Seth and then Indra. Seth?
I'm okay with keeping it once a month. I mean, because frankly, I haven't even made one yet because every time it comes up, I'm either scheduled with a meeting and, I've got work too. So I'm okay with one, I just pay attention after in emails, so.
Indra? Okay. All right, so bringing it back to council, section 6, agenda setting. I'm asking for council consensus on changing section 6 to read as on the screen and keeping the agenda setting to monthly meetings instead of semi-monthly. Can I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? I have a majority. Thank you. Okay, section 7, order of business. House cleaning item would be to strike out the 2 bullet points there, opportunity to review public comment and review emails. So that is order of business during a public meeting, correct?
That is correct, during one of your business meetings.
Okay, discussion, Seth.
Yeah, I would agree. I would with Victoria. I mean, I think we could keep our opportunity to review public comment. I don't know necessarily about the emails, but there is times when people leave public comment and then walk out, and you know, it'd be nice to, and you know, I don't know, give some feedback or discussion about it.
I can maybe provide some history from why that was put in there.
Please do.
It was put in there, I think, from it goes back to the mayor. Really, you need to determine what you want, what look and feel you want for your business meetings to do business. It was, I believe, and maybe one of the city council members might be able to elaborate on this too. I believe what we were seeing is we were seeing the council comments with regards to public comment was running just as long, if not longer, than the public comment. And so it was in the middle of our meeting, really starting to elongate our meetings. And it was almost starting to become a two-way dialogue based on that. And so I think from a standpoint of an efficiency perspective, council started to move in this direction to make sure you're running, the efficiency of the meeting was there.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Again, stating that the public meeting is to do business for the city. During each business item, there is afforded opportunity for public comment on that specific topic, and then there's general public comment at the end. If you, I guess, as council body, if you want to have a full-on conversation dialogue with the public during a public business meeting, that's your prerogative. That's basically what you're getting down to. Seth, and then Victoria.
Yeah, noted. And that's that's fine too. I mean, I guess, you know, we also have the 2 questions, which we don't utilize that often right now, it seems like. So, you know, I think maybe that's something. So I'm fine with keeping it crossed out both ways.
Victoria?
Yeah, I think that is a really good point. But I think there are some times when the public comments that you just feel like, oh, wow, that person said something really insightful or interesting, or there's something that I know that I would love to be able to give them that information right then and there. And so you would be afforded the ability to do that. So maybe if we changed it to something rather than opportunity to review public comment and review emails, which might be better at the end anyway on matters of mayor and council. Maybe if there was, after public comment, there could be the opportunity for council to respond if they wanted to. Just like the public is not supposed to address us, you know, as individuals. Maybe we could do the same to the public at the end and not address the person necessarily, but a comment that was brought up. So there's immediate feedback, because it just seemed like so many times it's lost, and you go, oh my gosh, I wanted to say that to that person, they're gone.
Aaron.
I popped up because there was one more reason. I know I had a discussion during this specific situation where I talked to the mayor and council and mentioned that it got to a point where, you're right, a council member might want to say something with regards to what the public said immediately, but then that may be contrary to what another council member thinks. And what we started to do is we started to have a dialogue on the subject, and you're starting to deliberate to a discussion that hasn't even been on the agenda. And so it's like I had to wait, hold on, council. This is, if you're wanting to go there, someone please request a workshop on it. And so that's why you sort of wait, you let things calm down, you digest, and at the end, if something that the public mentioned is hey, I still got some meat on that, let me request a workshop or something along those lines, or a memo or whatever. But I remember that was another situation where even with a comment, it started well, then you're starting to debate political views or policy that council may want to go, and we haven't had a discussion on that topic yet.
And then we do get into the gray area when you start a discussion that's outside of the agenda items, then that goes against Oregon meeting law because you haven't announced that topic and you're in full discussion of that topic. So that puts us in a little bit of hot water on our side of it, that we can't get into those discussions without having a 24-hour notice of the public meeting agenda. Any further discussion for section 7? Indra.
We've just not been practicing that so far, so I think things have been going pretty well with not doing that, so I don't see why we should start now.
Okay, so section 7, we have to be amended as shown on the screen. We'd be striking the 2 items. Get a consensus from...
To strike? To strike.
To strike. As read on the screen. Okay, looks like we have a consensus. So section 7 is amended as shown. Section 8 is to strike out Tuesday if Monday is a holiday, and replace it with that is prior to the Wednesday council meeting at 11:45. Further discussion on this, or just a consensus? Rick, did you have a comment?
So the way this is reading, is it mandatory we meet even if it's a holiday?
That's a very valid question. So if you strike out to change the workshop because of a holiday, would it then could be interpreted as we have to meet on that holiday? I guess that's what your question was, right?
Well, for clarity, we can add the holiday exemption to that for the language when we bring it forward to you at a business meeting, so that we can clarify that.
Does that suffice you, Rick? Okay. So consensus on changing section 8 as shown with the added verbiage of excluding the holiday. Looks like you have a consensus on that too. And I believe we already had a consensus on section 10. So at this moment in time, if there's no further discussion, I will ask if you have full direction.
I do, thank you, Mayor and Council.
And this will, just to clarify, this will, all the changes will be brought to us to officially adopt it in a public meeting?
Yeah, with the discussion, this would be just a resolution moving forward. We could put it on consent calendar, or you can have it as a council action item, but since it's more house cleaning based on your current practice, it could be just a consent item.
Indra? Okay, so the question is to bring this forth on the on a business meeting on the consent agenda, or would you like to have discussion? I will say consent agenda. Okay, so yes, bring it forth on the consent agenda.
Thank
please.
you.
And Indra, you had something else to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the public comment D, because we have, I have had a few individuals talk about the 2 minutes to speak. So I just wanted to speak on that I think it's, while I agree that public comment is so important and people just want to be heard. I mean, I don't think us talking back to them is really as important as us just listening to them to be heard. And that's why I think they come here to speak. I think 2 minutes, I understand that 3 is longer, but I think in 2 minutes we do hear the gist of what they want to say and speak. And if we have further individual things we might want to say to them, we can do that outside of the meeting, and it just makes the meeting more efficient and more people able to speak.
Okay, thank you. At this moment in time, we have agenda review on our schedule. Rob?
Yeah, I'm not sure to do this. So whether maybe it could be a reconsideration, or it could be for Wednesday night, or it could be just clarification, but somehow, I was guilty at the last meeting of not asking for a clarification on the water rate increase. We talked about the 1% on residential, but we never talked about how it was going to affect commercial. And I didn't, it wasn't clear to me in the packet. I couldn't figure it out. So, you know, initially, it was a few months back when we were going to discuss it right away, and Jason said, well, you know, let me work that out for you so it's more clear on the commercial side. But I never got clarity at the last meeting. Maybe other counselors did, but I'm not sure how that water rate increase is going to affect commercial. And so either I'd like to revisit that Wednesday night with some presentation, or somehow I'd like to be more clear on it.
Thank you, Rob. Does staff want to comment first?
Yeah, we can provide some additional information and make sure we highlight the commercial section for your consideration, so you have a better understanding of that.
So if we, you know, let's assume that it's agreeable to council, that the increase is reasonable, or it's similar to the increase for the residential. We may not want to change what we did on the last meeting, but if somehow that rate seemed like it really jumped off the page as being out of line, then council might want to reconsider the vote that we took at the last meeting. So I'm not sure how to handle that.
Yeah, and I don't have my computer in front of me, but in the last presentation, I think we did have residential commercial highlighted. And so it's in there. It's in the presentation that we forwarded to you in a PDF. And Jason just walked in too. But if you were looking at the commercial side of things and you saw that, wow, I don't know, that's too much, or that's not acceptable, then we would need to come back and have another discussion with you, because we would need to determine from a rate perspective, if you want to do anything with commercial, it does affect residential.
Well,
if I could, and Councilor, I did hear your question. In the back of the packet, and I alluded to it during my presentation, I had put, I want to say 9 different commercial examples in the back of the presentation for you guys to look at. I couldn't show them on the screen because the commercial are much more complicated, and it was hard to show to fit on the screen, which was why I put them in the packet. I should have stopped and said, please look at those and take a look, and if you ask me any questions. So they're all getting the same 1% increase plus the same changes to the treatment plant replacement fee. And the reason commercial is so hard to predict is because Councilor Nicholas's business is going to be far different than Councilor Pell's business, right? Because of the meter and how much water and how much sewer and all those other things. But they affect it the same way, just the same percentages.
So, okay, so you're saying it was the 1% with the 250 on the
replacement fee.
So, and is that true for any size business?
No.
250?
If you have a much bigger meter, it would be more than the 250 because that's sized. That 250 is for the 3/4 by 5/8. Right. The schedule that was in there did show that as you go up in size, that replacement fee did go up accordingly.
So off the top of your head, for Walmart or Fred Meyer, how much are they paying for their replacement? For the largest pipe size? Yeah.
It could be up to $1,000 a month for the replacement fee on a 10-inch or a 12-inch meter, I believe.
Okay, and for the 3/4 inch, it's the same 250 as residential?
Absolutely.
Okay, and the 1% also?
Yes, sir.
Okay, at what threshold did it, and I'm sorry, that wasn't clear to me.
Yeah.
So at what threshold would it be more than either 1% or more than the 250? How high up would you have to go?
So it's never more than the 1% on any of the other rates except the treatment plant replacement fee. And as you increase your meter size, it would be more than the $2.50 because that would be prorated based on the size of the meter.
Okay, so at what threshold? When you went from 3/4 to 1 inch?
Yes, sir. Or 1 inch to 2 inch or 1.5.
So like a 1 inch then would be how much more than the 3/4?
I could bring it up. I don't know it off the top of my head. It's not significant between 3/4 to 1.
Okay.
As you start going from 1 to 2 to 3, it gets much more significant, of course.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
No, you're quite welcome. Oh.
I can pull up the, Counselor Pell, do you want me to pull up the document?
Quit
The rate
over there.
Yeah.
for commercial?
Thank you. Well,
So we're going to get clarification for Rob, but then I had Kathleen and then Joel. Anybody else? And then Indra. So if you got 1 second, actually, we'll just go on to Kathleen and then when Aaron.
Yeah, my
pulls it-
question's really quick.
Okay, go ahead,
I just want to know if the applicant's going to be here Wednesday night.
Yes, I believe he will be.
Joel. We're not leaving you, Rob. We're just going to wait till he gets the information.
So a couple of follow-up items from today's workshop needs to go on the back of the agenda. And the first one is in February or March, we need to decide, for lack of a better word, any coordination with the feds or the state for earmarks. And I'm not sure that's the right way to put it, but at least have that as a tickler on the back of the agenda that follows up on our first speaker today. And then the second thing is on the back of the agenda also is to reiterate the need for the coordination with the committee chairs during strategic planning so that we don't lose track of that.
Sir, hold on. Indra and then Rob.
Yes, I guess selfishly, I wasn't able to zoom in on the last water rate thing, but I noticed when I looked back, there was not a lot of discussion on it, and there were a lot of unanswered questions. And after that happened, I did have some business owners come to me and talk about this, the potential struggle that they're going to have. Councilor Marshall voted no out of concern for business owners. I understand if Councilor Pell, since he voted yes, he is able to ask for a revisit and for a revote even, where we could have a discussion, maybe more of a discussion on it, and then have a revote to come, if enough councilors agreed, of course. But that's my understanding of how the revisit works. And personally, I would like to be involved in the discussion with it. But
Aaron? Oh, do you have numbers?
Yeah, here's the numbers up here for Jason.
Yeah. Those are just a couple of commercial examples. And scenario 2 was the one we adopted, correct? Or the council adopted?
Yeah, that's the 1% for over 3 years.
Over 3 years. And in the, did that also have a rate?
It's your presentation, so.
Any further discussion? Rob?
So I just want to be completely clear. Kathleen asked a question about the grant applicant Wednesday night. So is the grant applicant, is he expected to make some kind of presentation? I don't even know who I'm asking the question to, but is he supposed to make some kind of presentation, A? And if it's optional for him to be here Wednesday night, did he even know that he's invited? Does he even know that he's expected? I mean, I'm trying to get more clarity on what's going on Wednesday night, if we have clarity.
I'm in communication with him at this point about 3 times a day. Multiple emails going back and forth, and my expectation is that he will be here because he's been fine-tuning his proposal to meet the requirements for code based on discussions with staff over the last couple of weeks. My expectation is that I will be doing the primary presentation, but inviting him to explain the revisions that his proposal would have in order to meet code.
Great. And I think, and then it's clear that council will be able to ask him questions or.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, let's revisit the rate.
Behind me are the treatment plant replacement fee numbers, which, as you can see, the current numbers are $1,350 up to $1,365 if you were running water through a 10-inch meter. Those go up to, over the 3-year period, $16 to $1,618 between 3/4, and you can see the progression. It goes 16, 35, 67, 107. And that's based on meter equivalent. So the impact that each meter has to the system. So a 3/4 by 1 inch has an impact of 1. As you go up to a 1 inch, it has an impact of about 1.2 or 1.3, and so on and so forth.
Okay, and that was in the back of the packet?
That was in the packet.
Thank you.
You're quite welcome.
All right, we are still on agenda review. Any further questions?
I
Or
had a
comment?
question. Sorry. So it's just the size of the pipe, not how much water usage you use?
So there is still, but for
Even if the building's unoccupied and you're really not using water, you're paying a little less, but you're still paying a lot more?
The short answer to that is yes, because of your potential impact on the system. So both for your meter and your standby fee, there are fixed fees based on the potential impact to the system, meaning you've hooked up a, say, 2-inch meter, you could withdraw quite a bit of water from the system. So based on that today, you're going to pay a minimum of $175 for standby, or not fire standby, but just to have the service. Plus, you're going to pay $90, $91 for the treatment plant replacement fee.
So just one last comment. It's up to Councilor Pell on whether to revisit it or not. I wasn't part of that, but we have a lot of vacant buildings with people not using water and trying to pay them off and have no tenant. And so I'm very concerned about the cost to our businesses, and if possible, I would ask for him to revisit it.
Yeah, and if the buildings are vacant, they can have their water shut off to that building and pay zero. Correct me if I'm, Kimberly, am I correct? I got a nod from the back. She's our customer service expert. And so it will not cost them for that building to sit vacant with their water shut off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you kind of got to think about it. It's the demand to the system. So the amount of demand that's going on the system is going to be equated to the replacement costs for the water treatment. So basically, how much water they're going to take. Just like Jason just said, if that business is not in operation and that business does not have a tenant in their building, they have the right to shut their water down.
It's just not a good idea to shut water off, and then it costs to turn it back on.
Sorry, that's pretty inexpensive compared to the monthly fees, though, potentially.
Yeah. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, and just to protect you, Jason, you said it would cost zero. Is that also zero on the water plant replacement charge?
So if you shut the water service off, I believe, Kimberly, correct me if I'm wrong, you pay zero water fees. Any fees, if you say your service is vacant or your business is vacant.
Thank you.
And for the record, what Kimberly had said, our customer service supervisor, is there's zero charge for turning that water back on.
Thank you.
That brings up, but not for residential, correct? Because
yes, that is correct.
For
Kimberly, please.
I'm sorry, because I've gotten a notice from tenants about the cost of turning it back on for residential. Am I wrong?
It's live.
Okay, so the only time there would be a charge is if your tenant didn't pay their final bill, and that you have to pay what they left. Because in the state of Oregon, the water goes to the parcel, not the person. So it goes to the owner. So if you got a notice that said in order to get those services reinstated, you had to bring the former tenant's balance to zero. Otherwise, there's no fee to turn the water off or on.
No fee to turn it on after that?
No. As long as that bill is zero, we'll turn it on for free for you.
All right, is there any more questions in regards to the water rates? Okay, I'm going to bring it back full circle. Any more comments or Discussion in regards to the agenda review. Okay, seeing none, I will say that we're done and let's adjourn this workshop and go home. Thank you very much for your participation.